Chapter 1. The Fateful Overture. The afternoon sun filtered through the curtained windows of Sir Charles Marwood's London townhouse, casting long, languid shadows across the polished parquet floor. Outside, the faint strains of a piano practice drifted up from the basement where the celebrated composer Ambrose Fairchild rehearsed the final movements of his new concerto. It was an auspicious day. Tonight would be the world premiere, a revival of Fairchild's waning career. But within those harmonious notes lay an undercurrent of dread. Hercule Poirot, summoned from a leisurely breakfast at the Ritz, arrived precisely at 4 o'clock, cane in hand and impeccably dressed. His keen eyes took in every detail: the ornate gilt frames of concert posters, the neat stack of folio editions, and the steady cadence of footsteps on the stairs below. He could sense that this commission for security had the hallmarks of something far more sinister than a mere theft or act of vandalism. The household staff met him at the entrance hall, stern-faced but visibly anxious. "Monsieur Poirot," intoned the butler, Mr. Pritchard, bowing stiffly. He wore sober black morning attire, buttoned to the neck, as though bracing himself against a sorrow he could hardly name. "Miss Eleanor Fairchild has asked for you. She is awaiting you in the drawing-room." Poirot inclined his head. "I thank you, monsieur. Please announce me to the lady." He navigated the labyrinthine corridors to the drawing-room, where Eleanor Fairchild sat in her customary corner, clasping a lace handkerchief. She was slender, with ashen cheeks, paler than any lady of her years had a right to be, and her dark eyes betrayed sleepless nights. A solitary portrait of her brother Ambrose, in half-length, dominated the mantelpiece. The composer wore a rakish smile, one hand poised above a piano keyboard. Yet now his face in paint seemed pale and haunted. "Monsieur Poirot," she greeted him softly, rising to curtsy. "Thank you for coming so promptly." Her voice trembled. "Papa is unwell." Poirot settled into a high-backed chair across from her. He steepled his fingers. "Madame, pray do not distress yourself. I am here to ensure your brother's safety. But first, tell me exactly what has occurred." Eleanor inhaled deeply. "Ambrose has been ill for weeks. He insisted it was only nerves, nothing more. Yet last night—" She paused, tears gathering. "He collapsed at the piano. Dr. Bedford was summoned immediately. He believes Ambrose is being poisoned." A chill ran through Poirot. He regarded Eleanor carefully. "Poison? Extraordinary. Pray continue." She dabbed a tear at her cheek. "This morning, Papa discovered a vial beneath Ambrose's writing desk, labeled Digitalis Solution. He nearly administered it before realizing it was meant for Papa's ailing heart. Yet Ambrose never prescribed Digitalis for himself. Father is certain someone intended to give it to Ambrose." A silence fell. The distant piano strains halted abruptly, replaced by hushed voices. Poirot's little grey cells sprang to life. "Where is your brother now?" "In his living quarters down the hall," Eleanor replied. "He rests. Dr. Bedford stays with him. Mamma is in the conservatory, trying to keep her composure. They do not yet know I have involved you." Poirot nodded, rising. "Then time is of the essence. I must speak with Dr. Bedford at once, and afterward examine the room where the vial was found." He straightened his coat and followed Eleanor to the wide staircase, ornate balusters gleaming. At the bottom, They passed a closed door marked "Study." Poirot paused. This must be where Ambrose labours. Eleanor pushed open the door. The study was spacious, lined with mahogany shelves laden with music scores, thick ledgers of expenses, and several half-finished manuscripts. At a large desk, the overturned leather blotter revealed a small wooden box, its contents jumbled: sheet, music, correspondence, and, near the edge, the glass vial of digitalis. Poirot knelt to inspect it. The label was smudged. Dr. H. Bedford. He frowned. So the doctor was to deliver this? Father found it wedged between the piano stool and the desk this morning, Eleanor said. He recognized the label immediately, though he did not know it was meant for Ambrose. Poirot replaced the vial gently. I see. Now, let us locate Dr. Bedford. They retraced their steps, descending a narrow service stair to the lower level. Outside a sparsely furnished sitting room, Dr. Bedford, a kindly-faced man in his 50s, stood by a bedside. Ambrose Fairchild lay beneath starched linen sheets, eyes closed, breathing shallowly. The doctor looked up, surprise flickering. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, extending a gloved hand. "I feared you might arrive too late." Poirot examined Ambrose's pulse, then rose. "Monsieur Fairchild will live, provided we discover who sought to terminate his days prematurely. Doctor, did you prescribe digitalis for him?" Dr. Bedford shook his head. "Never. His ailment is fatigue, not heart trouble. I maintain his strength with mild tonics, nothing so potent as digitalis." He sighed. "I cannot fathom who would wish him harm. He is beloved by many, though, truth be told, these world of music and patronage can breed envy." Poirot nodded gravely. "Quite so. Madame Eleanor, kindly show me anyone who might gain by your brother's demise." Eleanor hesitated. "My dear brother has few rivals. Some whisper that Clarissa Benton, a prima donna cast as soloist tonight, resents his compositions, that he has overshadowed her career. Yet to poison him, would she dare?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "We shall see. For now, doctor, please keep me informed of any changes. I must gather a few belongings and hear from the household staff before the evening's performance. There is much to uncover before the first note is struck." Outside, distant preparations whispered through the corridors. Stagehands tuning instruments, ushers adjusting programs. Poirot straightened his hat. A deadly secret lurked beneath these gilded walls, hidden in the cadence of an overture. And Hercule Poirot, with his unmatched brilliance, would unmask it. Chapter 2. A discordant performance. Hercule Poirot awoke early the next morning in his suite at the Savoy Hotel. He had elected to spend the night in comfortable lodgings, believing that a detective's mind must rest between deductions. Yet his thoughts remained fixed on Ambrose Fairchild's case. Over a modest breakfast of petits pains and coffee, Poirot reviewed the facts. A vial of digitalis intended for another, discovered in Ambrose's study. The composer stricken by sudden illness. The looming premiere of the concerto he had composed. The schedule demanded Poirot's swift return to Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse. Arriving at the townhouse by 9 o'clock, Poirot found Eleanor Fairchild waiting at the entry, a face drawn with worry. "Monsieur, I trust you rested?" she asked. "Oui, mademoiselle, my little grey cells were active even in repose," he replied with a faint smile. "Now, let us continue. First, Poirot requested to examine Ambrose's bedroom more thoroughly. Dr. Bedford had retired to confer with the family, granting Poirot a quiet hour. The bedroom was snug, furnished in dark mahogany, and decorated with framed newspaper clippings praising Fairchild's earlier works. A grand piano occupied the corner nearest the window, its lid propped open but silent. Poirot's eyes flicked to a half-empty glass of water on the bedside table. He tapped the glass gently, checking for any residue. Eleanor intervened. Papa insisted he needed water during the night. Ambrose drank sparingly. Poirot examined the glass under the morning light. No trace of digitalis here, merci. He turned to Eleanor. Has the doctor examined the composer's meals? Perhaps the poison was administered in food. Dr. Bedford assured us that every dish Ambrose consumed was prepared by my mother's cook, Mrs. Pemberton, who uses only organic ingredients and no medicines, Eleanor said. Yet none can be certain. Poirot nodded gravely. Very well. I shall speak with Mrs. Pemberton next. Descending to the kitchen, Poirot found the cook bustling about a gleaming range, preparing midday tea. She was a stout woman with flour-dusted sleeves and a no-nonsense expression. Poirot offered a small bow. Madame Pemberton, I am Hercule Poirot. Do not be alarmed. I only wish to ask questions. The cook wiped her hands on an apron. I understand, monsieur. I'd do anything for Master Ambrose. What do you wish to know? Poirot approached a work table. Explain to me Ambrose's diet these past days. Breakfast was simple. Porridge with honey, toast, and coffee. Lunch was a light consommé, cold chicken salad and fruit. Dinner was roast beef, vegetables, and a lemon tart. I always taste everything first. She pursed her lips. Nothing untoward. Poirot considered her words. And did anyone besides the doctor or family enter the kitchen when preparing Ambrose's meals? Only myself and my assistant, Miss Lydia Hargrove, who fetched spices or tea. No one would dare sneak in otherwise. The house staff respect boundaries. Thank you, madame. It appears our poisoning did not occur in these dishes. Poirot inclined his head and departed. Next, Poirot visited the drawing-room, where Clarissa Benton, a statuesque woman with auburn hair and a sharp gaze, awaited. She wore a pale blue silk dress, as though preparing for performance. Her lips curved in a polite, guarded smile. Miss Benton, I trust your rehearsal went well this morning. Clarissa's eyes narrowed slightly. It did, Monsieur Poirot. The news of Ambrose's illness has unsettled me. I was to perform his concerto tonight. Indeed. I understand that you and Monsieur Fairchild have collaborated before. She lifted a slender eyebrow. Yes, but I would never wish him harm. His music is beautiful. I merely hoped to shine beneath it. Poirot studied her expression. Any one of us might harbor envy, but motive requires more. Have you noticed anyone behaving suspiciously in recent days? Clarissa reflected. Well, there was a quarrel between Ambrose and a young critic, Peter Lawrence. Peter claimed Ambrose stole themes from lesser-known composers. I saw them arguing near the conservatory 2 days ago. They exchanged heated words, though I did not witness violence. Poirot made a note. Very helpful, mademoiselle, thank you. He departed toward the conservatory, where a fine glass-house sheltered ferns and orchids. There he discovered Peter Lawrence, a gaunt young man scribbling notes. He looked startled at Poirot's arrival. "Monsieur Laurence, I hear you argued with Ambrose Fairchild. Care to elaborate?" Peter glanced nervously at a cluster of palms. "It wasn't serious, detective. I challenged him publicly after reading his score. He adapted a motif that I recognized from another composer I champion. He said I was mistaken. I left angry, but I never threatened him. Did you know of his health issues?" Peter shook his head. "No. I simply felt betrayed that someone of his reputation would lack originality. That was 2 nights ago. The next morning I heard he'd collapsed." Poirot offered a gentle smile. "Merci. We will need to speak again later, Monsieur Laurence." Poirot exited the conservatory. Eleanor appeared. "You have met Miss Benton and Mr. Lawrence. Is there anything else?" "Only one more inquiry. I wish to examine the piano in Ambrose's study. Back upstairs." Poirot lifted the piano lid, inspecting the strings and hammers. He spotted faint scratches near the tuning pins. "Curious. It seems someone attempted to sabotage the tuning. A sour note could distress the composer." Eleanor watched anxiously. Who would tamper with the piano? Possibly someone seeking to delay the performance, then poison Ambrose under cover of chaos. Poirot paused. "I shall gather Papa and the household staff later today, but tonight's premiere approaches. We must ensure a secure environment." Eleanor nodded, crossing herself. "I pray for my brother's recovery." Poirot's gaze lingered on the silent keys. Each step would bring him closer to the truth, and closer to a murderer's final note. Chapter 3. Whispers Behind the Curtain. Early the following morning, a hush lay over Sir Charles Marwood's London townhouse. Outside, carriage horses clipped along cobblestones. Hercule Poirot arrived at the appointed hour and noted the anxious expressions of staff. He paused in the foyer before proceeding to the drawing-room, where Sir Charles, Lady Fairchild, and senior staff awaited him. The family's composure was fraying, and Poirot intended to steady it with inquiry. Sir Charles rose from an armchair, a tall man with silvered hair. He looked the benevolent patron, yet worry dampened his bearing. "Monsieur Poirot, forgive my distress. Doctors say Ambrose's pulse is steady, yet he sleeps heavily," he said. He nodded toward closed double doors. "We wish to learn if anyone among us threatens his recovery." Poirot inclined his head. "Nous commencerons par comprendre les rapports dans cette maison. Who accesses the study and piano room besides family and musicians?" Sir Charles hesitated. "Only household staff, Madame Fairchild's maid, Miss Clara Whittaker, and Mr. Peter Lawrence, though he admits visiting Ambrose briefly after their argument." Lady Fairchild, a dignified woman, added. Eleanor's Fairchild, a dignified woman, added. Eleanor's assistant, Lydia Hargrove, also enters to fetch manuscripts. Lady Fairchild's pale fingers twisted a handkerchief. "True, but Lydia is devoted to Ambrose. Any visitor, however, might slip something into his tea, or hide a letter under his papers. Please investigate thoroughly." Poirot turned to Miss Whittaker, who stood by the hearth. "Mademoiselle Whittaker, have you noticed any unusual behavior? Any unfamiliar face in the corridors?" Miss Whittaker's voice trembled. "Monsieur, I saw a stranger in the hallway one evening, asking for Ambrose. He wore a dark overcoat and spoke briefly with my father. I thought it odd, but assumed he was a patron." "Describe him," Poirot prompted. She frowned. "Tall, narrow moustache, thin face. He carried a portfolio of papers and hurried away. Poirot nodded. "Thank you. Permit me to re-examine the study." The group followed Poirot upstairs. In Ambrose's study, he opened the wooden box on the desk. Beneath loose manuscripts lay a folded note. Poirot read aloud quietly, "The final movement will be your requiem." He studied the sharp, agitated handwriting. A direct threat, one we must trace. Eleanor drew close. How could this escape our notice? Ambrose must have hidden it among his drafts. I fear for him. Poirot pocketed the scrap. We must learn who delivered this message. He beckoned to Lydia Hargrove, who stood nearby. "Mademoiselle Hargrove, tell me where you were last evening." Lydia's voice trembled. "I fetched fresh sheets of music around 8 o'clock. I heard a man's voice in the hall, urgent but low. He emerged before I could knock, and I slipped away." "Who was it?" Poirot asked. She hesitated. "Monsieur Laurence. He knocked, asked to see Ambrose, but Ambrose refused. He insisted on urgent business and left." Poirot's expression tightened. "So, Monsieur Laurence returned after their argument. We must confirm this." He turned to Eleanor. "Allow me to inspect the salon prepared for tonight's private performance. If someone intends harm, they might prepare an instrument or hide poison." Eleanor led him to a spacious salon lined with burgundy velvet wallpaper. A grand piano dominated one corner, surrounded by chairs. On a side table, trays held decanters and glasses. Poirot lifted a glass and sniffed. No immediate sign of tampering. But these arrangements will change with extra guests. Someone could slip poison when attention divides. He noticed a smudge on the piano bench. "Look here. Grease from a stagehand's shoe. The bench's hinges are loose. A discordant note mid-performance might distract Ambrose, inviting opportunity." Eleanor gasped. So someone planned to sabotage the piano again. Who would risk being caught? Poirot allowed a small smile, though his eyes remained sharp. "Nous nous rapprochons. We have sightings of Monsieur Laurence, a threatening note, and evidence of tampering. Tonight's event brings everyone under one roof. I will remain vigilant so that no fatal chord is struck." He extended his cane toward the piano and chairs. "Monsieur Laurence and Clarissa Benton both stand under suspicion, yet motives remain unclear. The performance will prove decisive." He cast a final glance over the salon's furnishings, each a potential hiding place. "Be ready. The truth lurks within these melodies." Chapter 4. Prelude to Betrayal. As afternoon light mellowed through the tall windows, Hercule Poirot returned to the drawing-room, where Sir Charles Marwood paced anxiously. Lady Fairchild sat quietly, knitting lace, her gaze distant. Eleanor hovered nearby. Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Mes amis, let us not allow anxiety to tyrannize our intellects. We must methodically question each person connected to Ambrose's world." Sir Charles inclined his head. "Very well, monsieur. Whom shall we question next?" Poirot's gaze settled on Eleanor. "Your brother's circle extends beyond this household. Have you arranged for correspondence to be delivered here? Any letters of note?" Eleanor laid down her gloves. "His post arrives at mid-morning. I gathered his mail and placed it on his desk. Most letters were invitations and fan mail. Yet, yesterday, one envelope arrived addressed simply to A.F. in poor script. I deposited it unopened. I thought it promotional. I can fetch it now." She dashed upstairs and returned clutching a sealed cream-coloured envelope, the postmark of a modest provincial village. Poirot turned it gently in his gloved hands and observed the handwriting, hasty, sharp. He broke the seal and slid outward a folded note, reading silently, his eyebrows pulled together. Your haunting melody will be heard only if you pay the final price. Cease this performance or suffer an admirer. He folded the note carefully. Another threat. But this one bears no name, only fear. He intends to intimidate Ambrose into cancelling the concerto. Yet why? Who benefits if the performance fails? Lady Fairchild hesitated. Ambrose's patronage network includes impresarios who might be jealous of his revival. But to strike so viciously, it seems personal. Poirot nodded. Precisely, madam. We must consult Ambrose's trusted confidant, Monsieur Jules Beaumont, the violinist who rehearsed with him. He turned to Eleanor. Please send for him at once. Eleanor nodded and retreated. Moments later, the door opened to admit Jules Beaumont, a slender man with dark, curling hair and intense eyes. He wore a travel-worn coat, as though journeying. At the sight of Poirot, he inclined his head in greeting. Monsieur Poirot, I assumed you would call me. May I help? Mon ami, I thank you. You know Ambrose well. Did he confide in you any fears or disagreements? Beaumont's expression darkened. Ambrose spoke of feeling watched, of late-night footsteps outside his studio. He believed someone slipped in after hours. I dismissed it as nerves. Poirot steepled his fingers. And did he mention any quarrel with a rival musician? Beaumont's lip twitched. He detested Victor Crandall, a fellow composer whose once promising career was eclipsed by Ambrose's earlier successes. Victor's concerto flopped, and I heard him resent Ambrose's acclaim. They crossed paths at a gala a fortnight ago. Words were exchanged. Poirot's eyes glinted. Do you know Victor's whereabouts now? Beaumont nodded. He stays in Mayfair, near Grosvenor Square. He rarely leaves his lodgings, but he despises Ambrose's work. I suspect a vendetta. Poirot rose thoughtfully. We shall visit Monsieur Crandall. But first, I wish to inspect the local sheet, music shop on Baker Street, where Ambrose occasionally purchased rare manuscripts. Perhaps an aggrieved. Peer sought to poison his art, literally or figurative. Perhaps an aggrieved. Peer sought to poison his art, literally or figuratively, by slipping something into a manuscript. Sir Charles offered a bow. Lead the way, Monsieur Poirot. A carriage dispatched by Sir Charles conveyed Poirot, Eleanor, and Jules to the quiet thoroughfare of Baker Street. They halted before a modest shop, Harrison and Sons Fine Music Scores. A brass plaque gleamed in the fading sunlight. Poirot entered alone, leaving Eleanor and Beaumont outside on the pavement. Inside, the air smelled of parchment and varnish. Sheets of orchestral arrangements lined the walls. Behind the counter stood Mr. Harrison, a bearded man with spectacles, perched precariously. He surveyed Poirot calmly. Monsieur Poirot, to what do we owe this pleasure? Harrison removed his glasses. Poirot produced a card. You may recall I visited yesterday regarding Ambrose Fairchild. I wish to examine any recent transactions he made here. Harrison's brow furrowed. Certainly. Let me fetch my ledgers. He led Poirot to a small office at the back and produced a bound register. Ambrose purchased several rare Baroque, Manuscripts last week, nothing unusual. But this morning our delivery included a parcel addressed to Ambrose. The envelope carries no sender's name. It arrived with this morning's post. Poirot's fingers traced the ledger entry. "Show me the parcel." Harrison retrieved a slender package from beneath the register drawer. He handed it to Poirot. Poirot turned it over. "What is it?" he asked. Harrison shook his head. "I do not know. I assumed it contained music. I left it by the phone book." Poirot unwrapped the parcel carefully. Inside lay a single sheet of vellum, upon which someone had inscribed a musical motif in dense, spidery ink. The motif resembled a funeral march, dark, brooding. Poirot hummed it softly. "A dirge, an ominous message. It implies death, as the note in the study did. This is not a gift of admiration. It is a veiled threat." Eleanor and Beaumont entered. Poirot handed the sheet to Eleanor. "Mademoiselle, show this to your brother when he awakens. He must understand the seriousness. Monsieur Beaumont, did you recognize the notation?" Beaumont frowned. "It is not Ambrose's style. It has too many dissonances. I have no clue whose hand it is." Poirot refolded the vellum. "Our antagonist is both musically versed and malicious. We must find Victor Crandall immediately. Thank you, Monsieur Harrison." Harrison inclined his head solemnly as Poirot and the party departed. Outside, a chill breeze rippled the page of Eleanor's diary. The sun dipped lower, and shadows lengthened on Baker Street. Poirot's expression was grave. Each new threat deepened the mystery. Someone in Ambrose Fairchild's circle sought his demise not only through poison, but also through terror. Poirot, emboldened by his deductions, vowed silently that he would unmask the traitor before the curtain rose on Ambrose's final performance. Chapter 5. The Rival's Crescendo. Hercule Poirot awoke before dawn, restless despite a short night's sleep. The threat in the vellum from Harrison's shop had lingered like a sour chord in his mind. After a brisk wash and a light breakfast of bread and jam, he prepared to depart for Mayfair, where Victor Crandall resided. Eleanor Fairchild had travelled to the townhouse to check on her brother's condition, leaving Poirot and Jules Beaumont to journey in an awaiting carriage. Parisian clouds drifted overhead, but no rain fell as they passed through Hyde Park and toward Grosvenor Square. Upon arrival at Crandall's lodgings, Poirot surveyed the exterior with quiet intensity. A modest red brick townhouse bore a small brass plaque, V. Crandall, composer and arranger. The windows on the upper floor were curtained, drawing a firm boundary between the world outside and its occupant. Poirot tapped at the brass knocker, then stepped back. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a tall, lean man with hollow cheeks and wary, sunken eyes. His once dark hair was now streaked with grey. "Monsieur Crandall?" Poirot began with polite gravity. "I am Hercule Poirot, invited by the Fairchild family to discuss a matter of urgency concerning Monsieur Ambrose Fairchild. Please permit me and Monsieur Beaumont to enter." Crandall hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Very well. Please come in." He stepped aside and closed the door behind them. The interior was sparsely furnished. A battered upright piano against one wall, stacks of music scores piled in haphazard towers, and an unmade bed in the corner. A single lamp cast pale light across the room. The air smelled faintly of stale tobacco and ink. Poirot observed the pianist's sitting area. "Monsieur Crandall, it pains me to bring unpleasant news, but Ambrose Fairchild has been threatened. Poison was found in his study, and ominous messages were delivered. We seek to understand if you harbor ill will toward him." Crandall's eyes narrowed. "I resent jealousy, detective. Yes, but I would never commit murder. Ambrose's success overshadowed me for years. I labored in obscurity while he dazzled the world. Yet my music carries its own merit." "Undoubtedly, monsieur," Poirot responded calmly. "Nonetheless, motive can incline one towards desperate measures. On the evening of their argument at the gala, did you confront Ambrose publicly?" Crandall inhaled sharply. "He insulted my work, monsieur. He accused me of plagiarism. I confronted him in private later, demanding explanation. He offered none. When he refused to listen, I left in anger. But I have no desire to harm him physically, only to surpass him in composition." Jules Beaumont interjected. "Victor, I know you and Ambrose exchanged words, but surely you do not wish his ruin. Your own career depends on living composers supporting each other." Crandall's jaw tightened. "Support me? He monopolized every performance after our last competition. Promoters sought only his work. I suffered in silence. If his concerto fails tonight, perhaps I will finally be free of his shadow." Poirot's moustache twitched. "But, monsieur, you risk violating the laws of morality and legality. Tell me, did anyone visit you this week, offering assistance or promising success in exchange for silencing Ambrose? Did you accept anything?" Crandall's face flushed. He stepped to a desk and retrieved a small wooden box. Opening it, he revealed a triangular golden pendant. "I found this on my doorstep 2 days ago. No note, only this symbol, which I recognized as belonging to the Finnegan Circle." He closed the box and regarded Poirot. "They are patrons of forgotten talent. We meet secretly at night, discuss how the world undervalues genuine art. But I never sought their favor. Poirot leaned forward. "The Finnegan Circle, a group rumored to encourage dangerous actions when artists are desperate. Did any of them specifically request Ambrose's demise?" Crandall shook his head vigorously. "No. They offered encouragement, told me to salvage my career, but never to kill. I refused them. Then I found the pendant." He lifted it so Poirot could see a stylized lyre engraved on its face. "I feared they might act without my consent." Poirot rose and moved toward the piano. He lifted a single key, then examined the strings beneath. He noticed a fine, silvery thread caught between a hammer and string. Evidence of tampering. Again, someone sought to deprive Ambrose of his music and life. You, Monsieur Crandall, have motive and access, yet do you deny all involvement?" Crandall's lips trembled. He leaned against the piano and closed his eyes. "I swear, detective, I would not harm him. I only wished recognition, not death. The Circle's pendant. Perhaps they intend to frame me." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps so. But I must verify whether the Finnegan Circle convened here. Show me your arrangements for last night's calendar." Crandall opened a tattered notebook. In looping handwriting, he recorded meetings on Tuesday and Thursday nights, always at midnight, at a cellar beneath a music hall in Covent Garden. Poirot jotted notes, We shall investigate this gathering place. Meanwhile, I advise you to remain at your lodgings with a trusted companion. You might be in danger as well." Crandall offered a bleak smile. "I fear I am already lost, but I will cooperate." He extended both hands. "I want justice as much as you do." Poirot accepted his clasp. "Very good. I appreciate your candor." He pocketed the pendant. "This may guide us. For now, I shall return to Sir Charles's estate to confer with Dr. Bedford and the household. Time marches, and tonight's performance approaches. We must shield Ambrose from further harm, physical and psychological." Outside, a chill wind rustled the leaves on Grosvenor Square. Poirot and Beaumont walked to the waiting carriage. The rival composer's confession had afforded both relief and new questions. Who among Ambrose's circle would enlist a clandestine society, and whose artistry masked a murderous resolve? Poirot's steps, measured and purposeful, carried him back to the larger mystery, where every note, every threat, and every friendship might conceal lethal intent. Chapter 6. Shadows in the Cellar. The night air in Covent Garden held a damp chill as Hercule Poirot and Jules Beaumont stood before the inconspicuous entrance to the music hall. The gas lamps flickered, casting uneasy shadows on the pavement. It was nearing midnight. Giselle pointed out for the Finnegan Circle's clandestine gathering. Poirot adjusted his bowler hat and tugged at his coat collar, his sharp eyes taking in every detail of the empty street. "Nous voilà, mon ami," Poirot whispered, glancing at Jules. "Be ever vigilant. These secret meetings may conceal dangerous conspirators." Beaumont nodded, swallowing nervously. "I have never felt so uneasy, but the composer's life hangs in the balance. Let us proceed." They descended a narrow stairway hidden behind a heavy curtain of burgundy velvet. The scent of tobacco and musty wood greeted them as they reached a stout wooden door marked "Private." Poirot produced a small brass key, acquired from Victor Crandall's notebook entry, and fit it into the lock. With a soft click, the door swung open to reveal a dimly lit corridor. "We proceed carefully," Poirot murmured as they entered. Flickering candles lined the walls, and at the far end a group of 5 men huddled around a small table. Their faces were half hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats, and their voices came in hushed tones. At the head sat a tall figure in a cloak, his features obscured by the low brim of his hat. Poirot and Beaumont stepped into the room. The men glanced up, surprise flickering in their eyes, but a curt nod from the cloaked figure halted any immediate reaction. Poirot's gloved hand rested gently on his cane as he observed. "Good evening, gentlemen," Poirot said calmly, though his heart pounded. "I trust I am not intruding upon confidential matters." The cloaked leader lifted his chin. "Monsieur Poirot," he pronounced deliberately, his voice low and measured. "We anticipated your arrival. Join us if you wish to hear truest art flourish." Poirot inclined his head. "I came seeking understanding. Monsieur Crandall informed me of this circle's existence. I wish to know who among you sent threats to Monsieur Fairchild." A hush fell over the small group. One member, a thin man with staring eyes, arose and stepped toward Poirot. "Ambrose Fairchild has basked in the limelight for too long. Many of us languished in obscurity. He must pay for his arrogance." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And by pay, You mean deadly harm? The thin man's lips curled into a cruel smile. Art demands sacrifice. When the world ignores true genius, extreme measures become necessary. Beaumont bristled. You would murder a man for perceived slight? This is monstrous. The cloaked leader rose from his seat, finally revealing his face. The distinguished profile of Maestro Lorenzo Gallo, a once celebrated conductor whose career had declined after a scandal. His mustache was salt and pepper. His eyes gleamed with fanatic intensity. Lorenzo Gallo, Poirot recited unfazed. I recall your celebrated triumph at La Scala. Before the tragic fire that ended your tenure, you swore vengeance against any composer you deemed inferior. Gallo inclined his head curtly. Ambrose's music soared where mine faltered. The Finnegan Circle saw in him a rival to be removed. I alone orchestrated the poisoning schemes. Jules counted on his fingers, aghast. But how? He lives still. Because our first effort failed, orchestrated with digitalis, Gallo admitted, nodding to the thin man who produced a syringe. We attempted to administer poison at the rehearsal. Then the threats, notes, vellum, and motif to force cancellation. Now for the final act. Poirot remained poised. Gentlemen, this is murder. If Ambrose's health fails tonight, it will be due to your designs. Yet I wonder, how did you bypass the household staff? How did you know his schedule? Gallo smiled darkly. We observed. Crandall provided inside knowledge. He recognized my symbol on the pendant. From there, we manipulated the others. Clarissa Benton's jealousy, Peter Lawrence's the others. Clarissa Benton's jealousy, Peter Lawrence's spite, each a pawn to divert suspicion. Poirot nodded slowly. Ingenious, but not foolproof. Now that I am here, you have only moments. Gallo's eyes flicked to a hidden lever near the back wall. Perhaps this is so. He advanced toward the lever. In a single fluid motion, Poirot raised his cane like a colonel's baton and tapped the thin man's sleeve. Maintenant. Before the man could react, Jules lunged forward and forced Gallo aside. The lever fell under Jules's grasp before it could trigger any mechanism. A heavy grate slid open to reveal a narrow well of darkness, an empty pit reaching far below, meant to entrap any intruders to their scheme. Gallo lunged angrily, but Poirot's voice cut through. Apron Gallo, arrêtez. For once, his French was clipped and firm. The conspirators, startled, realized that their secret was uncovered. Two of them leapt for the exit, but Beaumont barred the only door. The cellar echoed with sharp exclamations as the conspirators attempted to flee. Briars of fear bloomed across their faces. A sudden crash echoed through the corridor as Sir Charles Marwood's carriage guards burst in, summoned earlier by Eleanor when she discovered suspicious activity in Ambrose's study. The guards seized the conspirators, restraining each man's frantic struggles. Gallo, face contorted with rage, glared at Poirot. You have betrayed true art, detective. Poirot straightened his tie, expression calm. I have saved a man's life. That alone is justice. As the guards escorted the Finnegan Circle members away, Jules returned to Poirot's side. We must hurry back to ensure Ambrose's safety. Poirot nodded, glancing at the well. Their descent into darkness is only beginning. They ascended the stairs briskly, leaving the cellar and its hidden horrors behind them. Outside, the lamps of Covent Garden glowed brighter against the ink-black sky. Poirot paused, inhaling the misty air. The conspiracy had been unmasked, yet one final thread remained. Would Ambrose survive long enough to claim victory over death's grim overture? With resolute determination, Poirot vowed to stand guard until the concerto's last note rang true. Chapter 7. The Calm. Before the cadenza grey morning light filtered through the tall windows of Sir Charles Marwood's drawing-room, as Hercule Poirot and Jules Beaumont returned from Covent Garden. The townhouse, once tense with whispered threats, seemed momentarily tranquil. Poirot's small moustache bristled as he took a deep breath. "Now, my ami, we must see to Monsieur Fairchild's well-being." They found Eleanor Fairchild pacing near the hearth, her face pale but hopeful. At the sound of their footsteps, she hurried forward. "Monsieur Poirot, you have apprehended the conspirators." Her voice trembled between relief and lingering dread. "Oui, mademoiselle," Poirot replied, inclining his head. "Gallo and his Finnegan circle lie in custody. The conspiracy to silence your brother has been thwarted, but Ambrose's condition remains fragile. I pray he rallies for tonight's performance." He motioned toward Jules. "Dr. Beaumont, if you please, guide me to Ambrose's chamber." Jules offered a supportive hand. "Follow me." They ascended to the composer's suite, gliding past portraits of past musical luminaries. In the softly lit corridor, the hush was interrupted only by the faint ticking of a grandfather clock. Poirot touched the handle of the study door, now locked, and moved past it into the bedroom, where Dr. Bedford awaited beside the bed. Ambrose Fairchild lay beneath crisp white sheets, his once defiant features slack with weariness. A pale sheen of sweat dotted his brow. Dr. Bedford, stethoscope in hand, rose to greet them. "Monsieur Poirot, Monsieur Beaumont, I am pleased you have returned safely." His pulse is weak but steady. "We nourished him with warm broth before you arrived." He extended a vial of clear liquid. "This is a mild restorative, phosphorus tincture to aid his strength." Poirot crouched by the bedside, studying Ambrose's lined face. "Thank you, doctor. Continue to administer as needed. Mademoiselle Eleanor has been vigilant. We must ensure no stray malice remains." He turned to Eleanor, who hovered anxiously by the door. "Mademoiselle, sit. Allow me to speak privately with Monsieur Fairchild." Eleanor seated herself in a velvet armchair, her fingers intertwined. Poirot leaned closer to the bed and touched Ambrose's hand. "Monsieur Fairchild, can you hear me?" Ambrose's eyes fluttered open, his breathing shallow. Recognition dawned. He attempted a smile. "Hercule." His voice was a rasp. "Your strength grows. You are safe, thanks to the efforts of your family and friends," Poirot assured him softly. "You have a premiere to conduct tonight." Jules took the proffered vial and dispensed a few drops on Ambrose's tongue. As the composer swallowed, his eyelids closed. Poirot straightened. "He needs rest. Gentlemen, I suggest we allow him peace until late afternoon. Madame, please keep vigil and allow no one to disturb his slumber." He inclined his head to Dr. Bedford and Jules. "Inform me immediately should he stir." Eleanor rose, pressing her lips together. "Thank you, monsieur. I will remain here." Poirot and Jules departed quietly. Once alone, Eleanor sank onto the edge of the bed, brushing a lock of hair from Ambrose's forehead. "Fight, my dear brother," she whispered. Downstairs, Poirot gathered Sir Charles, Lady Fairchild, Clarissa Benton, and Peter Lawrence in the drawing-room. The arrest of Gallo and his conspirators had reverberated through London's musical circles. A small courtroom now awaited their testimonies. Yet tonight's concert pressed closer. Poirot's grey eyes swept the assembled group. "Mesdames et messieurs, Gallo and his circle are imprisoned. However, the threats against Monsieur Fairchild have not fully vanished. We intercepted a final attempt at sabotage upon Gallo's arrest. A loose piano hammer intended to collapse a critical string when your brother performed his concerto." He turned to Sir Charles. "The piano tuner has already replaced the mechanism, but I shall remain near the stage this evening." Sir Charles straightened, relief mingling with residual alarm. "Merci, Monsieur Poirot. Your vigilance has been most commendable." Lady Fairchild, her gentle face lined with concern, rose. "My son's career and life owe much to you. We shall hear restorative news from Dr. Bedford soon, I trust." "Indeed," Poirot murmured as he scanned Clarissa and Peter. Clarissa Benton, the gifted soprano, looked contrite. Clarissa Benton, the gifted soprano, looked contrite. Her violet eyes brimmed with genuine concern. "Clarissa," Poirot began, "your presence here has raised eyebrows, but your alibi has held. You bear no guilt." Clarissa inclined her head. "I only sought to support Ambrose's genius. I tremble at his condition." Peter Lawrence, the young critic who had challenged Ambrose's originality, inclined his head in remorse. "I falsified my indignation. I regret my harsh words, and if I contributed to this chaos, I beg your forgiveness." Poirot offered a small smile. "Words can wound, but you plotted no physical harm. Let us hope Monsieur Fairchild recovers fully to prove your skepticism misplaced." A servant entered, bowing. "Madame, Dr. Bedford sends word. Ambrose is stirring." Aids, ancient, and collective hush descended. Poirot motioned for silence as he led the party upstairs. On the landing he paused and turned to Eleanor and Dr. Bedford, who waited anxiously at the bedroom door. "Is he conscious?" Eleanor's voice trembled. Dr. Bedford nodded. "He spoke his name. I gave him a sip of tea. His strength returns." Poirot took Ambrose's study key from Eleanor. "Permit me to check his manuscripts remain untouched." He entered the study, dust motes dancing in beams of sunlight. The wooden box lay undisturbed, and the desk bore no fresh threats. Poirot exhaled. "Nous voici en sécurité." He returned the key to Eleanor. By late afternoon, Ambrose emerged from his bedroom, clad in a chaise-longue robe. He leaned on Dr. Bedford's arm, pale but determined. Eleanor fluttered to his side. "Brother," she whispered, "are you well enough for the concert?" Ambrose drew a shaky breath and managed a wry half-smile. "I shall try, monsieur. The music demands me." Poirot stepped forward. "Monsieur, I advise caution. Rest until the last possible moment, then take the stage. We have ensured your safety." Ambrose nodded, his grey-green eyes steely with resolve. "I will not let Gallo's darkness triumph." As evening approached, the household transformed. Stagehands repositioned chairs, Lanterns glowed with warm light. The piano's polished surface reflected flickers of hope. Outside, guests began to arrive. Patrons, critics, and musicians. A hush settled over the assembled throng, unaware of the peril averted. Backstage, Poirot stationed himself near the piano, observing every flutter of sheet music and exchange of glances. Ambrose paced behind the curtain, steadying his nerves. Eleanor hovered near the side door, offering encouraging smiles. The overture to the concerto began in muffled hums as the orchestra tuned. Poirot closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the timbre. In the hush that preceded the conductor's rise of baton, Poirot whispered, "May every note fall true." He opened his eyes to see Ambrose take his place at the piano, shoulder squared, fingers poised above the keys. The audience's expectant silence stretched taut. Then, with a single deliberate flourish, Ambrose Fairchild struck the first chord, a triumphant, unwavering declaration of survival. The concerto began, each movement a testament to life's resilience against malice, and Poirot's heart swelled with quiet satisfaction. Chapter 8. The final note of truth. The concert hall's hush deepened as Ambrose Fairchild's trembling fingers swept across the keys. Each note resonated with a vitality that defied his recent ordeal. The audience inhaled collectively, sensing the composer's fragile yet resolute spirit. In the orchestra pit, precisions were exact. Each musician watched Ambrose as though guarding his life. At the rear of the stage, Hercule Poirot remained poised, keen eyes trained on every shadow. Should any final betrayal unfold, he would intercept it. As the first movement unfolded, Ambrose's touch grew more assured. The melodies swelled in cascading arpeggios, echoing through gilded balconies. Poirot noted the pianist's coaxing of a particularly delicate arpeggio. The left-hand chord landed true, free of sabotage. He inclined his head ever so slightly, acknowledging the success of his earlier intervention with the piano tuner. Yet suspicion still lingered. Poison might yet find its way into a backstage refreshment or slip beneath a thread of fabric. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit box seat, Eleanor clutched a lace handkerchief. Her knuckles turned white as the music soared. Each chord affirmed her brother's recovery. Next to her, Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild exchanged furtive glances, their hearts alight with hope tempered by residual fear. If Ambrose persevered through all three movements, the sinister machinations of Lorenzo Gallo and his accomplices would lay broken. The timpani rumbled as the second movement commenced, its mournful undertones reminding listeners of the peril that Ambrose had faced. Jules Beaumont, seated among the musicians, steadied himself. He had spent the evening at Ambrose's side, administering gentle tonics. Now, seeing the composer's resilience embodied in that mournful theme, Jules's own relief resonated like a softened chord. If any of the conspirators had tainted Ambrose's tea, or offered him laced refreshments during the interval, fate would have revealed itself by now. Yet the pianist showed no sign of distress. Backstage, Clarissa Benton stood by a small table adorned with crystal decanters of water and herbal infusions. Piercing groves of lamplight struck the polished surface as she ensured Ambrose's nourishment remained pure. She had regained the trust of the Fairchild family after her earlier suspicion. Her violet eyes shone with admiration as the concerto progressed. She understood more fully now that her role transcended rivalry. She was a guardian of art itself. As the second movement faded, a subtle murmur rippled through the audience. Poirot remained still, mask-like, but internally he examined every face. Did anyone glance at the water decanter with malice? Did any hand linger suspiciously near a napkin or vial? The house lights dimmed briefly as the orchestra prepared for the final movement, a triumphant allegro that symbolized both rebirth and vindication. Ambrose hesitated only a heartbeat before launching into the final theme. His posture straightened, shoulders squared with determination. The hall seemed to pulse with the music, a united heartbeat of strings, winds, and percussion. Crescendos rose like a tide, sweeping away doubts. Poirot's gaze shifted to the wings, where a single attendant stood, Miss Lydia Hargrove, Ambrose's faithful assistant. Lydia's presence guaranteed that the manuscripts remained intact. Poirot nodded to her, a silent commendation. A vigilance ensured no subterfuge could slip onto the score. In that moment, from the rear of the second balcony, a harsh cough rang out, abrupt, discordant. Head swiveled. Poirot inhaled sharply, instinct urging him to investigate. Yet the cough belonged not to a conspirator, but to Dr. Hamilton Reynolds, a medical beneficiary whose health required regular pacing. The composer never faltered. Ambrose's final chord thundered, filling the hall with sonorous triumph. The audience rose as one, applause reverberating like a celebratory wave. Silver chandeliers cast refracted light across the proscenium, as though heaven itself applauded. Poirot allowed himself a rare, slight smile. The concerto had concluded without calamity, yet the performance alone did not seal justice. He rose and motioned discreetly to two constables positioned behind the stage. They approached, their footsteps muffled against the carpeting. Poirot inclined his head toward the wings, where a figure waited. Victor Crandall, subdued and remorseful, seated on a foldable stool. Crandall's combined relief and guilt were evident. He had betrayed Ambrose's friendship, allowed himself to become entangled with Gallo's malicious design. But he had provided the key to uncovering the conspiracy, and now, in this triumph, he sensed the false redemption that earlier illusions promised would dissolve. As the ovation reached its zenith, Poirot quietly guided the constables toward the backstage corridor. They took hold of Lorenzo Gallo and the thin-eyed conspirator apprehended earlier, who had been hidden with false passes in the technical section. Ambrose rose from his bench, bowing, his face aglow with triumph. Clarissa stepped forward to assist. Him and Eleanor released a breath she had held since dawn. Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild enveloped their son in proud embraces. When the hall finally emptied, Poirot joined Ambrose in a small dressing-room. The composer, his hair damp with exertion, gripped Poirot's hand. "Monsieur Poirot, I owe you more than words can express. You restored my life and my music." Poirot inclined his head politely. "Monsieur, I merely directed fortune. But tell me, did you feel anything, weakness, dizziness, during the final movement?" Ambrose shook his head, voice steady. "No, I felt enriched by every note. Whatever poison Gallo attempted must have been neutralized." Poirot retrieved a small phial from his coat pocket, the residual sample of Gallo's earlier digitalis. Indeed, I ensured that any tainted vial was replaced. Moreover, I instructed Dr. Chesney, standing by at the venue, to administer an antidote should any trace linger. Poirot's eyes twinkled. You are safeguarded every step of the way. Tired laughter escaped Ambrose's lips. I owe my life to your little grey cells. He reached into his coat pocket and produced a slender envelope. I wanted you to have this, my newest concerto, dedicated to you. May it be performed in venues far beyond London, where justice for art prevails. Poirot touched the envelope respectfully. Merci, monsieur. It is the highest honor. As Ambrose dressed in a crisp jacket for the post-concert reception, Poirot reached for his cane. They descended together into the hall, where clouds of roses and lilies awaited. The patrons gathered to commend the composer. Through the throng, Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild approached, their expressions alight with gratitude. Inspector, does the law still pursue Gallo? Sir Charles asked softly. Poirot allowed himself another rare, gentle smile. They will face trial, monsieur. The final note is not ours to strike. But tonight, Ambrose Fairchild's music triumphed over malice. That is sufficient victory. With that, Poirot lifted his hat to the gathering and melted into the crowd, his mission accomplished. Every note of betrayal transformed into a resounding symphony of justice. Chapter 9. Coda of Confession Morning arrived with a soft hush over London, the echoes of applause still lingering in the corridors of Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse. Poirot awoke before dawn, his mind racing through the events of the previous night. The triumph of Ambrose Fairchild's concerto had driven away the threat, yet questions remained unanswered. He dressed meticulously, selecting a dark suit and pinstripe waistcoat that matched his usual fastidious standards. At breakfast, Eleanor Fairchild joined him, her expression a blend of relief and lingering concern. Monsieur Poirot, she began, the household stirs with gratitude, yet I wonder if all the conspirators have truly confessed their motives. Poirot nodded, sipping his tea thoughtfully. Nous devons be certain. The Finnegan circle has been unmasked, yet Dr. Gallo's influence may extend farther than we realize. Before they could discuss further, a discreet knock sounded at the door. Standing there was John Pritchard, the butler, bearing a sealed envelope addressed to Hercule Poirot. Poirot took the envelope and examined it. The handwriting was unfamiliar, jagged, as though written hastily beneath pressure. He opened it and withdrew a single sheet. Eleanor watched anxiously as he read. Poirot's brow tightened. A plea from someone inside the circle, he murmured. The letter read, My conscience cannot endure the ruin I helped create. I wish to reveal all. Meet me tonight at the old chapel on Fleet Street. Eleanor gasped. But that chapel was decommissioned years ago. Why there? Poirot folded the note and straightened. Because secrets prefer solitude. We must learn who wrote this. Late that evening, Poirot and Eleanor set out in a discreet carriage, leaving Sir Charles to oversee preparations at the townhouse. Jules Beaumont arranged to tend to Ambrose's recovery, allowing the detective and his confidant to pursue this new lead. The chapel on Fleet Street stood hidden behind a row of shuttered townhouses, Its worn stone facade was bathed in pale moonlight, and the heavy oak door bore no sign, save for a tarnished brass cross. Poirot tapped softly, and the door creaked open. A lone figure stood in the nave, cloak pulled low over the shoulders, face hidden in shadow. The air smelled of old pews and candle wax, a silent sanctuary for confession. Poirot approached, his cane tapping against the stone floor. "You invited us, monsieur. Speak freely." The figure hesitated, then withdrew the hood, revealing the gaunt features of the thin-eyed conspirator whom Poirot and Jules had held the previous night. His face was lined with guilt, and his voice trembled as he began. I watched Ambrose's success grow, and I envied him. Gallows' promises of patronage led me to betray my moral duty. But Crandall betrayed Gallo thereafter. I fear for my soul, having helped orchestrate deceit. Poirot listened intently. What else must we know of Gallo's designs? The man swallowed. Gallo intended to destroy Ambrose's reputation as well as his life. He planted falsified reviews under my name, claiming Ambrose plagiarized his work. He planned to reveal these lies posthumously if Ambrose perished on the stage. Poirot's eyes narrowed. We must recover any such documents and destroy them before Gallo's trial. They spent hours searching dimly for Gallo's hidden manuscripts, forgeries, and letters designed to besmirch a composer's name. By dawn, their task was complete. The conspirator's confession had cleared the remaining stains on Ambrose's character. As morning light broke, Poirot and Eleanor returned to the townhouse. Ambrose awaited them, seated at a small table, pen in hand, writing the final passages of his new symphony. He looked up, smiling, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You have given me the gift of truth, Hercule Poirot." Poirot inclined his head. "It is finished, monsieur. The coda of this saga finds justice served and malice silenced." Eleanor reached for her brother's hand. "Now we look to brighter days." Ambrose nodded. "My music shall rise above these shadows." That afternoon, Ambrose's new symphony premiered before an eager audience. Percussion thundered, strings soared, and woodwinds danced through themes of redemption. Eleanor and Poirot shared a knowing glance as the final chord resolved into triumphant silence. Later, as guests mingled in the grand salon, and Sir Charles raised his glass, toasting victory. Chapter 10. The Postlude of Harmony. Early morning sunlight filtered through the tall sash windows of Sir Charles Marwood's drawing-room, illuminating the brass plaque that declared the family's name. The aftermath of Ambrose Fairchild's triumphant concerts still hummed in the air, and this morning held a different kind of resonance. The denouement of a trial that had captivated London's musical circles. During the night, Gallo and his conspirators had been transported to Westminster Magistrates' Court, where evidence collected by Hercule Poirot and Dr. Jules Beaumont was presented in irrefutable detail. Near the grand piano stood Eleanor Fairchild, her posture composed, yet her eyes bright with anticipation. Beside her, Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild exchanged hopeful glances. A soprano melody drifted softly from the street below, signaling the arrival of the family's guests. Among them, Clarissa Benton, resplendent in a lavender gown, Peter Lawrence, pen behind ear, ready to report, and Victor Crandall, who entered with a quiet dignity, resolved to rebuild his career on his own merits. Each person had a stake in this morning's proceedings, either as witness, supporter, or grateful beneficiary of justice served. Hercule Poirot arrived precisely at 9:30, cane in hand, hair immaculate in its symmetrical flourish. He tapped lightly on the drawing-room's doorframe. "Mes amis, the hour has come." The Fairchild family and their circle of friends circled him, curiosity and gratitude mirrored on their faces. Sir Charles extended a welcoming wave. "Monsieur Poirot, do you trust the trial will confirm what we know to be true?" Poirot offered a small, assured smile. "Le travail du juge is slow, but truth, like a well-tuned piano, will eventually reveal its pure notes. Let us go." They mounted a carriage provided by Sir Charles's estate and proceeded to Westminster. Along the way, Poirot reviewed the evidence in his mind. The hidden vial of digitalis, the forged musical motifs, Gallows' own admission, and the Finnegan Circle's conspiratorial correspondence. Each piece had been essential to unraveling the plot. The carriage rattled over cobblestones as they neared the grey stone facade of the courthouse, where morning crowds gathered to witness the final act. Inside the courtroom, hushed whispers punctuated the air. Gallows sat at the defendant's table, face sallow, moustache trimmed but dishevelled, eyes cast downward. The prosecution's barrister stood at a polished oak lectern, voice clear as he recapitulated the facts. How Gallows had orchestrated attempts to poison Ambrose Fairchild, sabotage the piano's tuning mechanism, and commissioned threatening notes and forged musical denunciations. Poirot sat in the gallery, cane across his lap, observing each reaction. Dr. Jules Beaumont rose as a witness, recounting Ambrose Fairchild's medical condition, the interventions that saved the composer, and the biological analysis of the substances discovered. When Beaumont described the faint traces of digitalis found in a discarded vial under Ambrose's desk, the courtroom gasped. As he spoke of the antidote administered on the evening of the premiere, relief washed over the observers. Even Gallows' shoulders slumped further. Presenting the forged vellum motif as evidence, Poirot himself testified, detailing how he had traced Gallows' handwriting and musical style to the dark funeral march that had arrived at Harrison's shop. Next, Victor Crandall was called. Despite his own motives of jealousy, he had provided the key to the Finnegan Circle's secret meeting place and their inner decrees. Crandall's voice was steady, tinged with regret, as he confessed to his initial complicity, but insisted on his cooperation. The judge leaned forward, noting each detail. Peter Lawrence and Clarissa Benton both gave statements that exonerated them, attesting to Gallows' influence and emphasizing how they had been diverted by false evidence. Finally, a quiet figure, the gaunt conspirator from Fleet Street, took the stand, tearfully admitting to forging letters and assisting Gallows' design, yielding the last thread of deception. When the prosecution rested, Gallows' barrister attempted to shift blame to Crandall and the Finnegan Circle, but the judge cut short his arguments. The weight of guilt lay heavy on Gallows' shoulders as the verdict was pronounced. Guilty on multiple counts of attempted murder and conspiracy to defame. A murmur rippled through the courtroom as Gallows was taken into custody, his final expression one of resigned despair. Ambrose Fairchild, seated beside Eleanor and Sir Charles, allowed himself a breath he had yet to exhale. Later that afternoon, the Fairchild drawing-room buzzed with subdued celebration. The trial's outcome had lifted the last vestiges of fear, but the tone was tempered by reflection on how close they had come to tragedy. Poirot stood by the piano, fingertips on the polished tragedy. Poirot stood by the piano, fingertips on the polished wood, as Clarissa Benton rehearsed for a private recital, a tribute to Ambrose's resilience. Her voice soared through the room, carrying a blend of sorrow and triumph that resonated deeply within every soul present. Victor Crandall approached Poirot quietly, extending his hand. "Monsieur Poirot, I wish to thank you for your mercy and understanding. You could have prosecuted me as well, yet you granted me the opportunity to atone." Poirot inclined his head with graciousness. "Monsieur Crandall, art is born of redemption. You chose to assist, and that virtue redeems your earlier missteps. Now go forth and compose honestly. Let your music speak, unburdened by envy." Crandall's eyes shimmered. "I shall, monsieur. I will strive to honor that counsel." Eleanor joined them, radiant in a pale blue dress, Ambrose's favorite color. She placed a gentle hand on Poirot's arm. "We are forever indebted to you. My brother's music and our family live because you persisted." Poirot's moustache twitched in a rare, tender smile. "Your family's love sustained my little grey cells. I only aligned the notes of evidence. Now the melody of life returns to normal pitch." Sir Charles proposed a toast. "To Monsieur Poirot, whose dedication has ensured that truth and art shall prevail." Glasses clinked, and the room filled with gratitude. As evening fell, Ambrose Fairchild himself joined the gathering, steady and unbowed. Dressed in an elegant tailcoat, he took his place at the piano once more. This time his composition was a chamber piece, soft, reflective, a dedication to resilience and the healing power of music. The hush that followed his opening chord was profound, as if the walls themselves were listening. Each note carried a story: the shock of betrayal, the struggle to survive, and finally the liberated grace of victory. When the final note faded, Poirot rose and bowed deeply. Eleanor clapped, tears brimming in her eyes. Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild embraced, and the small audience erupted in heartfelt applause. Poirot stepped back, satisfied that the harmony of justice and art had been restored. As he exited the drawing-room into the tranquil night, his cane tapping softly, he reflected that sometimes the sweetest melody is one forged through adversity and redeemed by truth. And as long as there were composers like Ambrose Fairchild, the music of humanity would never fall silent. Chapter 11. Resonance of Renewal. The morning after Ambrose Fairchild's intimate chamber recital dawned with a stillness that felt almost sacred. In the drawing-room of Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse, the last traces of the previous night's celebration lingered like echoes. Sunlight filtered through fine lace curtains, illuminating the gilt frames of Ambrose's portraits. He sat at the grand piano, hands poised above the keys, as if testing whether his music still resonated within him. His expression was both contemplative and determined. Hercule Poirot arrived precisely at 10 o'clock. He paused in the doorway, observing Ambrose's posture. The composer's shoulders were squared now, free of the pallor and weariness that had shadowed him for weeks. Poirot's little grey cells remained alert. He knew that recovery was an ongoing process, not merely the absence of immediate danger. "Monsieur Fairchild," Poirot began, stepping forward, "how do you find your strength this morning?" Ambrose let out a measured breath. "Better, monsieur. I slept well for the first time since this ordeal began, and I believe my creative spark returns. Yet I feel cautious. My music must flow without fear." He ran a gentle scale, its notes ringing clear and true. "Every chord reassures me that nothing can silence genuine art." Poirot inclined his head. "Your music has already triumphed over malice. Now perhaps we might discuss how you wish to present your next work to the public." He seated himself on a nearby chair. "The trial concluded, and your name stands unblemished. Critics and patrons await your compositions eagerly, but caution is wise. You may consider a gradual reintroduction, a series of smaller recitals, allowing your health to strengthen before a major premiere." Ambrose nodded thoughtfully. "A wise suggestion. I propose we organize a salon performance at the townhouse next week. Invite only devoted listeners. Clarissa Benton, Victor Crandall, Peter Lawrence, and a few loyal patrons." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Très bien. A private salon will serve both your artistic needs and your well-being. Meanwhile, the world may continue speculating on your triumphant return." He rose, straightening his tie. "I shall see Master Crandall and Miss Benton this afternoon to finalize details. In the meantime, Monsieur Beaumont must continue to oversee your regimen." Jules Beaumont entered with a porcelain teacup in hand. "Monsieur Fairchild, I have prepared a light tonic and instructions for today's exercises. Your body must strengthen gently." He placed the cup on a side table. "Tomorrow we shall introduce brief walks in Hyde Park. Balance of mind and body, n'est-ce pas?" Ambrose offered a grateful smile. "Merci, doctor. Your care has been invaluable." Later that afternoon, Poirot strolled through Hyde Park with Victor Crandall. The air was crisp, and clusters of early crocuses dotted the grass. Crandall carried a leather satchel containing annotated scores and watercolors he intended as salutations for Ambrose's recovery. He spoke quietly, hands clasped behind his back. "Monsieur Poirot, I wish to express my deepest regret again. My envy led me into Gallows' Web, and I fear my career may suffer for that complicity." Poirot regarded Crandall kindly. "Monsieur, everyone errs. Your cooperation and honest admission have redeemed you. Patronage awaits those who show genuine talent and integrity. I shall accompany you to speak with a few impresarios I know. Your music deserves a fair hearing." He paused near a flowering magnolia. "Je crois that true artistry forgives those who seek atonement." As dusk fell, Poirot returned to the townhouse to greet Clarissa Benton. She stood in the drawing-room, arranging fresh roses in a crystal vase as sunlight waned behind her. She wore a gown of soft lavender, her auburn hair pinned loosely to reveal a graceful neck. Poirot approached, bowing slightly. "Mademoiselle Benton, your voice last night was a salve upon Ambrose's spirit. He speaks of collaborating with you on a vocal suite for soprano and piano." Clarissa's eyes shone. "It would be my honor, Monsieur Poirot. Our music may transcend past rivalries. I believe we share a purpose. We share a purpose to uplift the soul." She turned, allowing Poirot to see a folded list of guest names on a polished side table. "I have prepared the invitations for next week's salon. Only those who supported Ambrose from the start, or repented sincerely, are included. I trust this aligns with your guidance." Poirot smiled. "Parfait. It is precisely what your friend needs. A circle of trust. The evening will renew his confidence." He eyed the guest list. Victor Crandall, Jules Beaumont, Lady and Sir Charles, Peter Lawrence, Eleanor, Clarissa herself, and Dr. Bedford. "I suggest we include the young critic, Mr. Lawrence. His pen can shape public opinion. Perhaps a gracious review can help heal Ambrose's reputation further." Clarissa nodded. "It shall be as you advise." The following week, the salon gathered precisely as planned. Candles flickered in tall sconces, and soft chatter filled the room. Ambrose, seated at the grand piano, exchanged greetings with each guest. Victor placed fresh scores atop the piano, and Clarissa settled at a small music stand near him. Peter Lawrence, pen in hand, observed keenly. A warm expression on his face, Officer Pritchard ensured the door was closed to the public. The music began, a collaborative suite by Ambrose and Clarissa, each movement weaving themes of grief, renewal, and hope. Ambrose's fingers danced effortlessly, and Clarissa's soprano soared, the air quivering with emotion. Guests sat entranced, some with tears glistening. When the final chord faded, there was a moment of profound silence before applause erupted. Poirot, standing at the back, nodded to Dr. Bedford, who watched Ambrose's steady breathing with approval. The composer bowed, gratitude shining in his eyes. Eleanor pressed a kiss to his cheek. Victor Crandall offered a gentle applause, perhaps contemplating his own path to redemption. Afterward, as the salon dissolved into subdued conversation, Peter Lawrence approached Ambrose. "Your music moves the heart, monsieur. I confess I misjudged you. In my next column, I shall praise your artistry and perseverance." Ambrose inclined his head. "Merci, Monsieur Lawrence. Your words mean more than you know." Poirot stepped beside them, surveying the scene, his little grey cells satisfied that Ambrose's world had found harmony once more. Guests mingled, laughter rippling through the drawing-room like a gentle cadence. Outside, London's evening sky wore a tranquil blue, undisturbed by past shadows. In that moment, Poirot reflected that while threats could linger, true art possessed an enduring power to heal. As candles flickered and music lingered in the memory of every soul present, he felt certain that this coda of renewal would resonate far beyond the walls of Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse, a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond between composer and melody. Chapter 12. Echoes of the Overture. The morning after the salon performance dawned calm and bright. Sunlight spilled into Sir Charles Marwood's drawing-room, warming the polished wood and gilded frames. Ambrose Fairchild awoke rested, his strength restored by the previous night's success. He sat at the grand piano, fingers tracing the keys, as though greeting an old friend. He inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp air. Today held fewer obligations: a light practice session, a stroll in Hyde Park, and a private meeting with Monsieur Poirot. Yet beneath the surface, subtle tensions still lingered, waiting to be addressed. Hercule Poirot arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, bowler hat in hand, his moustache immaculately waxed. He greeted Ambrose with a polite nod. "Monsieur Fairchild, you seem in fine spirits." Ambrose returned the nod, eyes bright. "Merci, Monsieur Poirot. The music flows without hesitation now. Yet, I wonder if the world's applause has quieted our vigilance too soon." Poirot inclined his head, acknowledging the composer's instinct for caution. "Vous avez raison. Even when darkness recedes, its shadow can linger. Let us walk and discuss any remaining uncertainties." They descended the sweeping staircase into the foyer, where Eleanor awaited them, cradling a porcelain teacup. She curtsied gently. "Monsieur Poirot, I trust your visit finds us well." Poirot offered a genial smile. "Mademoiselle, your brother thrives, but I would like to ensure that the harmony we cherish does not fracture." With that, they stepped into the waiting carriage and set off toward Hyde Park. The carriage rattled along cobblestones until it entered the tree-lined avenues of the park. Early joggers passed by, and the lake shimmered under a cerulean sky. Poirot and Ambrose disembarked, stretching legs unused to leisurely stroll. Eleanor kept pace behind them, hands clasped as she admired the environment. Poirot turned to Ambrose. "Tell me, monsieur, has any music publisher or impresario sought new material since the Salon?" Ambrose raised a brow. "Indeed, Lady Pembroke, a patron of the arts, sent numerous letters requesting further compositions. Yet I have deferred, preferring to establish my health firmly before making any long-term commitments." Poirot allowed a satisfied hum. "Prudent. Your recovery remains paramount. However, I have reviewed Peter Lawrence's commentary. Your review appeared in the London Gazette yesterday. His words carried genuine admiration, yet he included a curious caveat. He hinted that someone still seeks to undermine your legacy. Have you seen that?" Ambrose frowned. "I read his column. He lauded my renewed creativity, but warned of lingering enmity. He did not name names. I cannot imagine who might still wish me harm, unless remnants of Gallows' influence persist." Eleanor joined the conversation. Perhaps a few of Gallows' admirers feel betrayed by the trial outcome. His circle might harbor resentment, though doubtless they lie low now. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "It is possible. I suggest we visit Dr. Bedford later today." He examined a fragment of a torn note found backstage during the Salon, signed with the emblem of the Finnegan Circle. "It implies that Gallows' followers anticipated a resurgence and planned to strike again once you felt secure. We must ensure that no piece of that note remains hidden in the theatre or your study." Ambrose's jaw tightened. "Then the work is not yet complete." They walked toward the south bank, where benches faced the lake. Dr. Bedford awaited them, slender prescription pad in hand. He rose to greet them, expression sombre. "Monsieur Fairchild, Monsieur Poirot, I have examined the fragment you retrieved. It warns, the final overture shall seal your fate beyond the stage. We seal your fate beyond the stage. We suspect it alludes to a later public performance, perhaps at the Grand Concert Hall in Mayfair." Poirot's moustache twitched in thought. "If they foresee another public venue, we must survey probable locations. The Kensington Philharmonic, the Royal Albert Hall." Dr. Bedford shook his head. "Neither. Their schedules do not list a scheduled performance. However, tomorrow evening The Lyceum Theatre hosts a benefit concert where your chamber suite will debut. The note mentions chords in the Lyceum. We believe that is the intended target. Ambrose glanced toward the walkway. Eleanor will perform a solo piece there. My chamber suite accompanies her. We must cancel or alter the program. Poirot placed a hand on Ambrose's shoulder. Your health must come first. I will contact the Lyceum's management to postpone the benefit. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Clarissa do not need to appear under threat. Eleanor's eyes widened. I had no idea. I will write to Lady Pembroke at once, requesting postponement. But would that not arouse suspicion among patrons? Poirot shook his head. Better to be safe than sorry. A simple explanation, health reasons, usually suffices. As for your suite, we may arrange a private recital at this house next week. That provides equivalent exposure without risk. Ambrose nodded, resolve firm. Do whatever is necessary. I cannot risk another betrayal. Later that afternoon, Poirot returned to the Lyceum Theatre disguised as a visiting manager, walking through empty corridors with a ledger in hand. The stage loomed vast, and dozens of folding chairs awaited patrons. He located the box office manager, a stout woman named Mrs. Bromley. Madame, Poirot began pleasantly, I apologize for the inconvenience, but we must postpone the chamber suite performance with immediate effect. Monsieur Fairchild's health has suffered relapse, and Lady Pembroke supports a future date. Mrs. Bromley peered over her spectacles. Monsieur Poirot, this is unfortunate news. I already printed 20 programs and informed staff. Yet, if his health falters, we cannot proceed. I will notify the orchestra and the soloist. Poirot smiled. Merci beaucoup. I trust you will inform the press merely of a scheduling delay. No further details are necessary. As he departed, Poirot examined the stage floor for any sign of tampering. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard was a slender vial labeled cyanide concert ice. He raised an eyebrow. My suspicions confirm your caution. He pocketed the vial and met Dr. Bedford in the foyer. They returned to Hyde Park where Ambrose and Eleanor awaited. Poirot produced the vial. Madam, this intended ice cube, placed to dissolve into water glasses during your performance, would have been fatal. We averted disaster by postponing. Eleanor shuddered. Thank you, monsieur. I cannot imagine what good remains in such hatred. Ambrose placed a hand on his sister's shoulder. Our music shall outlive their spite. He turned to Poirot. When this is behind us, I wish to compose a requiem not for death, but for forgiveness. Poirot's eyes softened. That will be a melody the world needs. For now, we have ensured your overture echoes free of malice. He cast a glance at the lake, where ripples caught the afternoon sun. Let us walk home. Your inspiration awaits. As they strolled back through Hyde Park's winding paths, the promise of peaceful days ahead felt tangible. Shadows of the past tested their resolve, but Ambrose Fairchild and his circle faced the future with courage, bound by music and solidarity. And Hercule Poirot, with his steadfast brilliance, walked beside them, ensuring that no dark note would ever again overshadow their symphony of hope. Chapter 13. Intermezzo of Hope. The morning sun warmed the drawing-room at Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse with a gentle glow, illuminating the polished wood of the grand piano, and casting soft reflections across Ambrose Fairchild's latest manuscripts. clusters of freshly cut roses, white lilies and pale pink peonies adorned every table. A hush of expectancy followed. Hercule Poirot, as he entered, noting how the once solemn atmosphere now felt suffused with understated joy. Today marked a turning point. Ambrose would host his first public masterclass for promising young musicians, reaffirming his commitment not only to performance, but also to mentorship. Ambrose stood by the piano, clad in a well-cut morning coat, his eyes bright with purpose. Eleanor Fairchild hovered nearby, clutching a notebook filled with prospective students' names. Clarissa Benton, seated at a small writing desk, penned invitations to local music academies. Victor Crandall lingered in the corner, quietly sketching thematic ideas for a collaborative piece with Ambrose. Even Peter Lawrence had joined the household, preparing an article for the London Chronicle profiling Ambrose's journey from peril to triumph. Poirot approached Ambrose with a slight nod. "Monsieur Fairchild, your ensemble of talents is impressive. The world shall witness not only your genius, but the legacy it fosters." He paused, glancing at Crandall. "Monsieur Crandall, how fare you in your own compositions?" Crandall rose, bowing respectfully. "Better, Monsieur Poirot. I find clarity in renewal. I have begun work on a sonata dedicated to reconciliation, a reflection of what transpired here." He offered a modest smile. "I hope it stands on its own merits." Poirot inclined his head. "Je vous encourage. Your collaboration today shall benefit from shared wisdom." He turned to Eleanor. "And, mademoiselle, have you confirmed the attendees?" Eleanor nodded, tapping her notebook. 20 pupils are confirmed, including 3 violinists, 2 cellists, and a group of pianists. They arrive at noon for warm-up exercises and master-class instructions. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Precise planning as always, mademoiselle. Now, allow me a moment with your brother." He followed Ambrose to the piano, where the composer flexed his fingers over the ivory keys. Ambrose offered a small smile. "Hercule, I confess to a touch of nerves. Teaching while still rebuilding my reputation feels daunting." Poirot placed a comforting hand on Ambrose's shoulder. "Monsieur Fairchild, you possess not only talent, but compassion. Your pupils sense sincerity, a quality that no malice can tarnish. Teach from the heart, and your artistry will flourish anew." Ambrose nodded, breathing deeply, as if drawing strength from Poirot's confidence. "Thank you, old friend. With your counsel, I feel ready." By midday, the students and their guardians assembled in the large music room. The vaulted ceiling echoed with hushed conversation. Violin bows poised, breath steadying before the strings, fingers done. Violin bows poised, breath steadying before the strings, fingers dancing over piano keys in tentative scales. Ambrose stood at a central podium, greeting each young musician with warmth and encouragement. Clarissa offered a soft accompaniment on a second piano, ensuring seamless transitions. Victor Crandall observed from a back bench, quietly jotting notations to incorporate into his sonata. He caught Ambrose's eye and gave a subtle nod. "Your guidance now ignites theirs." Ambrose smiled, gesturing toward a timid young violinist playing a minor scale. "Très bien, Mademoiselle Singer. Aim for steadiness and warmth in each note." Clarissa leaned in, offering a gentle demonstration of bow pressure and wrist motion. The violinist's shoulders relaxed, and her sound blossomed with newfound resonance. A ripple of admiration passed among the assembled. Poirot watched from the side as Ambrose guided a trio of cellists through a Chopin nocturne transcription. Each cellist's bow moved in unison, their intonation deepening under Ambrose's careful instruction. When the trio concluded, the room applauded softly, a respectful murmur of promise. Poirot felt a surge of satisfaction. Where once Ambrose faced threats, he now nurtured talent. During a break, Peter Lawrence approached Poirot. "Detective, I must thank you again. My article appears tomorrow. It praises Ambrose's resilience and laments the lengths to which envy can drive a musician." He tapped his pen thoughtfully. "I also discovered that Gallo's remaining supporters circulated a brief pamphlet last week, attacking Ambrose's legitimacy. They've dispersed now that Gallo faces trial, but their pamphlet had begun to reach amateur circles." Poirot arched an eyebrow. "Then your exposé serves a dual purpose. It celebrates Ambrose's triumph and counters lingering slander. Ensure your words are clear. Falsehoods die in the presence of truth." Peter nodded, scribbling corrections in his notebook. Across the room, Clarissa offered Ambrose a cup of herbal infusion. "Dear Ambrose, I see your pupils respond to you as if to a beacon. Your story inspires them." She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I intend to dedicate my next aria to your courage. Courage beyond crescendo." Ambrose's eyes shone with gratitude. "Your art elevates mine, Clarissa. Our collaboration reaches new heights beyond rivalry." Victor joined them, leaning toward Ambrose. "I have completed the first movement of my sonata. Perhaps we may workshop it together soon." His voice carried a tone of hopeful collaboration rather than competition. Ambrose clasped Victor's arm. "With pleasure. Let us transform rivalries into symphonies of unity." As the masterclass concluded, the students departed with newfound confidence. Ambrose stood in the center of the room, surveying the empty chairs, and quietly humming a gentle melody. Poirot approached, offering congratulations. "Monsieur Fairchild, your legacy now flourishes through those you teach. From threat to triumph, your journey inspires many." Poirot took a small silver snuff-box from his pocket, an old token of esteem, placing it gently on Ambrose's piano. "A small gift to commemorate today. May you always find solace in music." Ambrose touched the snuff-box reverently. "Vous êtes toujours trop aimable," he replied softly. "Your friendship stands as my greatest composition." Eleanor appeared at the doorway, bright-eyed. "Brother, the afternoon holds more promise. Lady Pembroke called to arrange your next private recital at the Pembroke estate. She offers full patronage." Ambrose's gaze softened. "Then our next overture begins there." He turned to Poirot. "I invite you to join us. Your presence ensures our harmony remains unbroken." Poirot, inclining his head, bowed modestly. "I am honored, and as long as there are mysteries in the world, perhaps I shall seek them less frequently here, for the melody of your life plays on in peaceful chords." He straightened, glancing back toward the students' departing footsteps, echoing down the corridor. "But should darkness ever return, you know where to find me." Ambrose smiled, lifting his hand. "Until then, mon ami, may music guide us forward." As Poirot left the drawing-room, he paused at the threshold, breathing in the air, fragrant with rose petals and promise. The once fractured overture of Ambrose Fairchild's life had blossomed into a symphony of hope, each note resonant with forgiveness, renewal, and the unbreakable bonds forged by artistry and compassion. Chapter 14. A Patron's Embrace. The morning light found Ambrose Fairchild at his piano once more, fingers gliding over familiar keys as he prepared for the upcoming recital at the Pembroke estate. The day's agenda brimmed with promise: Lady Pembroke's luncheon, a meeting with influential patrons, and an intimate performance in her elegantly appointed salon. Yet beneath Ambrose's renewed confidence lay a slender thread of anticipation. This would be his first major event outside the safety of Sir Charles's townhouse. He paused, allowing a chord to resonate, and drew a steadying breath. Eleanor Fairchild entered, her notebook open and her eyes bright. "Brother, Lady Pembroke has arranged for a carriage to collect us at noon sharp. Her estate is in Kent, 2 hours' drive from London. She intends a private audience with Lord Pembroke before the recital." Ambrose rose, closing the piano lid gently. "Merci, Eleanor. I feel prepared, though I admit a flicker of nerves. To perform before a distinguished audience, some of whom may have lingered doubts, carries weight." He ran a hand through his hair, smiling wryly. "But the music must speak more loudly than any rumor." Eleanor nodded firmly. "Your music has conquered greater fears. I have also prepared a list of family and friends to invite discreetly, should Lady Pembroke wish to expand the salon after the recital." She tapped her notebook. "Clarissa Benton, Victor Crandall, and Dr. Jules Beaumont are confirmed. Peter Lawrence will arrive later to cover the event." Ambrose inclined his head. "Excellent. Let us depart with confidence." He retrieved a tailored frock-coat and adjusted his cravat, then offered his arm to Eleanor as they descended the grand staircase. Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild stood in the foyer to bid them farewell. Lady Fairchild's shawl reflected pale lavender hues, complementing their daughter's dress. "My dear Ambrose," Lady Fairchild said softly, "we trust in your talent and your spirit. May this performance secure your reputation among London's most discerning circles." Sir Charles embraced Ambrose. "Montfris, go forth with pride. Your music has already triumphed over darkness. Today let it dazzle hearts anew." He held the composer's shoulders firmly. "We await your return with glowing news." Ambrose smiled, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Father, Mother. I will make every note count." He and Eleanor stepped onto the waiting carriage, and the driver snapped the reins. The horses trotted onto Piccadilly, London's bustling streets passing in blurred motion as they headed southeast toward Kent. By early afternoon, the carriage wound along tree-lined country lanes, and verdant fields stretched beneath a cobalt sky. Lady Pembroke's estate emerged beyond a gentle rise, a Georgian manor of pale stone, flanked by manicured gardens and ancient oaks. Servants in crisp liveries awaited their arrival on the gravel forecourt. Lady Pembroke herself stood at the front steps, an elegant woman in a pale rose silk dress, silver hair coiffed, and eyes as keen as they were welcoming. "Ambrose, Eleanor," she greeted, extending a slender hand. "Welcome to Pembroke Hall. I trust the journey was comfortable." Her voice carried both warmth and refinement. "Very much so, Lady Pembroke. Ambrose replied, bowing slightly. "Your estate is splendid." Lady Pembroke smiled. "Thank you. Please allow me to introduce you to Lord Pembroke." She led them into a marble-floored foyer, where Lord Pembroke, a stately man with salt-and-pepper moustache, stood. He offered a courteous nod. "Monsieur Fairchild, I eagerly await your recital this afternoon. I have heard much of your resilience and artistry." Ambrose inclined his head. "Your lordship, it is an honor to perform in your home. I hope to offer music worthy of your patronage." Lord Pembroke's eyes crinkled. "I have no doubt you shall. Let us proceed to the library for luncheon." They followed him through corridors adorned with ancestral portraits, and into a spacious room lined with leather-bound volumes. Over plates of poached salmon and asparagus, conversation flowed easily. Lady Pembroke asked Ambrose about his latest compositions, and he described his emerging requiem for forgiveness. Victor Crandall, summoned earlier, arrived shortly after luncheon and joined the table, as did Clarissa Benton. The two exchanged respectful greetings before returning to the drawing-room to prepare for the performance. After luncheon, Lady Pembroke led Ambrose and his party through a side corridor to a softly lit salon, where a small audience had already gathered. Plush armchairs faced a polished mahogany piano beneath a crystal chandelier. Gilded mirrors reflected the muted daylight, and pale lilac draperies framed tall windows overlooking a rose garden. A hush settled as Ambrose took his place at the piano bench, Eleanor and Clarissa standing nearby in support. Ambrose offered a small bow. "Thank you all for your kindness in attending today's performance. I present a selection of my chamber works, a prelude, an intermezzo, and a finale in honor of Lady Pembroke's patronage." He glanced at Clarissa, who offered an encouraging nod. "If there are any periodicals or critics present, I welcome your honest impressions." With that, Ambrose pressed a key, and the prelude unfolded, soft, contemplative, flowing like a gentle stream. Each note resonated through the salon, the marble hearths absorbing the sound as though pledging their own support. Lady Pembroke listened intently, her posture as still as a statue, yet her gaze reflected genuine emotion. The intermezzo followed, a duet between piano and Clarissa's voice, the latter singing an original melody with text celebrating renewal. Clarissa's voice soared, weaving through Ambrose's harmonies in seamless collaboration. The assembled guests, several young gentry, a pair of London's most influential impresarios, and two music critics, watched in rapt attention, eyes shining with admiration. As the final notes of the intermezzo faded, Lady Pembroke rose from her seat. "Magnificent," she whispered. "Truly, your music transcends adversity." She turned to her husband, whose head nodded gravely, a rare gesture of unreserved approval. The critics exchanged quizzical glances, jotting notes that would surely reflect praise rather than lingering skepticism. For the finale, Ambrose chose a brisk allegro movement, bright, jubilant, reflecting the joy of artistic triumph. The stamping of piano pedals and Clarissa's soaring crescendos filled the room with exuberance. At the last chord, the chandelier's crystals trembled as if applauding alongside the guests. A moment of stunned silence passed before the salon erupted in applause. Two gentlemen from the back, the impresarios James Marchand and Frederick Darrington, approached Ambrose. Marchand, A portly man with a discerning eye extended his hand. "Monsieur Fairchild, I represent the Langdon Opera House. We would be honored to present your chamber suite in our upcoming season. Your music deserves a broader stage." Darrington, taller and more reserved, offered his own congratulations. "And we at Darrington & Co. would like to publish your latest works. Your resilience and artistry mark you as a composer of unique promise." Ambrose's heart swelled. He exchanged glances with Eleanor, whose eyes glistened with tears of pride. "I am deeply grateful," Ambrose said. "Your patronage affirms both my music and the spirit that endures through hardship." Lady Pembroke stepped forward. Applause still resonating. "We witness not only superb performance, but also a testament to perseverance. Today, Ambrose Fairchild stands as a portrait of renewal." She raised her glass. "To the composer whose music heals shadows, and whose heart remains steadfast." Glasses clinked in agreement, and the salon filled with genuine celebration. Ambrose bowed, gratitude filling his chest. Poirot, standing quietly at the back, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The malice that once threatened to silence Ambrose had been vanquished, replaced by a chorus of support that now lifted the composer even higher. As the afternoon waned, guests mingled in the gardens beneath blooming roses. Victor Crandall and Ambrose discussed collaborative projects, while Clarissa offered suggestions for vocal technique to local musicians. Peter Lawrence jotted further notes for his next column, and Dr. Jules Beaumont conversed with Lady Pembroke about future health regimens for Ambrose. Poirot observed from the garden's fringes, cane in hand, his keen eyes taking in each detail: the estate's serenity, birds flitting among the hedges, sunlight dancing across fountains, felt in harmony with the composer's restored spirit. In that moment, Poirot reflected on the journey. From threats in the shadows to this luminous gathering, music had served as both refuge and rallying cry. As twilight approached, Ambrose stepped away from the salon and found Poirot beneath a rose arbor. He extended his hand in gratitude. "Hercule, without your guidance, none of this would have been possible. You believed in me when darkness threatened to extinguish hope." Poirot offered his familiar nod. "Mon ami, I only aligned the notes of justice. The true melody belonged to you and those who stood by your side. Continue to compose, and may your music always remind us that even in the deepest shadows, a single note of hope can ignite brilliance." Ambrose smiled, gazing over the rose gardens as evening shadows lengthened. "I shall never forget, and when the world's doubts resurface, I will remember today, when a patron's embrace reaffirmed my path." Poirot placed a hand on Ambrose's shoulder, warmth in his eyes. "And I shall remain ever vigilant for any discord that dares intrude upon harmony." With that, he tipped his hat and stepped back into the fading light, content that Ambrose Fairchild's future would unfold in a symphony of promise rather than peril. Chapter 15. Symphony of Collaboration. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse, casting a warm glow on the music stands and polished floors of the study. Ambrose Fairchild sat at his desk, pen in hand, reviewing the score of his latest quartet. The Pembroke recital had been a triumph. but he felt restless. There was more to create, more to share. Across the room, Clarissa Benton adjusted the placement of her sheet music, preparing to rehearse their new vocal and piano duet. A gentle breeze lifted a loose page, and Clarissa caught it with a grateful smile. Hercule Poirot entered, hat in hand, his moustache neatly waxed. He crossed to Ambrose's side, scrutinizing the notes. "Monsieur Fairchild, your quartet shows promise, rich harmonies, and a lyrical second movement. You have not lost a touch of brilliance." Poirot's tone was measured, reflecting both admiration and encouragement. Ambrose leaned back, rubbing tired eyes. "Merci, Hercule. Yet I worry these notes may fall flat without the right interpreters. I wish to assemble a small ensemble to premiere this work. Would you guide me?" He tapped the desk. The Fairchild Quartet must be something more than individual virtuosos. They must breathe as one. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed. Collaboration demands trust and unity. I recommend engaging Victor Crandall, who has shown renewed passion for composition. His violin technique is superb, and his transformation lends sincerity to the ensemble." Clarissa, overhearing from her piano bench, rose and joined them. "Victor has prepared new passages to fit your quartet. He tested a motif last night, and it blended seamlessly with my vocal lines. Together, we can refine your quartet into something transcendent." Ambrose's eyes brightened. "Then let us convene with Victor this afternoon. Eleanor, please invite him to join us here for rehearsal." Eleanor appeared from the adjoining salon, where she had been arranging fresh roses. "Consider it done," she said, tapping her notebook. He confirmed his availability. She bowed and retreated. Later that afternoon, Victor Crandall arrived, carrying his violin case and several sketches for the quartet. He greeted Ambrose and Clarissa with a respectful bow, then unpacked his instrument. The three seated themselves around a mahogany music stand, each with a copy of the score. "So," Ambrose began, "I propose a canonical opening. 2 violins, followed by cello, then piano. Clarissa, your voice shall enter in the second movement. Your melody builds upon my harmony." He tapped the first bars. "Listen." Clarissa raised her hands, eliciting a delicate chord from Ambrose's piano. The 2 violins joined in, their tones merging with crystalline clarity. Victor's violin wove through the texture, adding warmth. Listening intently, Poirot tapped his cane on the parquet floor, in time with the rhythm. "Magnifique! Yet in the recapitulation, perhaps the cello should assume greater prominence, an echo of the heartbeat that sustained you through peril." Ambrose turned to Dr. Jules Beaumont, who had joined as an observer. "Doctor, can you find a cellist of suitable skill at short notice, Jules? Your network might identify one." Jules nodded. "I will contact Madame Bruni, the principal cellist at the new London Conservatory. She has a suitable protégée, Madame Ingrid Larsen, whose style complements this quartet." A few hours later, Ingrid arrived, cello in hand. Tall, poised, with gentle intensity in her eyes, she greeted the group with a slight bow. "Monsieur Fairchild, I am honored to participate." She seated herself, adjusting the end pin. The quartet reorganized. Victor on first violin, a second violinist named Marcel Dubois, recommended by Ingrid. Ingrid on cello, Clarissa standing ready for her vocal entrance, and Ambrose at the piano. The Écriture du Fond began with the first movement. the opening motif unfurling like a greeting. Marcel's violin provided a bright counterpoint to Victor's richer timbre. Ingrid's cello joined in the lower register, and Ambrose's piano anchored the harmonic foundation. Clarissa listened while cradling a leather-bound book of lyrics. She would not sing until the second movement. Poirot, seated nearby, closed his eyes as he absorbed the musical dialogue. When the first movement concluded, Ingrid lowered her bow. "Exquisite writing, Monsieur Fairchild. The interplay of voices is both challenging and rewarding." Marcel nodded, brushing his bow across a loose string. "Indeed, it demands precision and unity." Ambrose smiled, offering a nod of gratitude. "Merci. Now, let us tackle the second movement. Clarissa, this is where your voice intertwines. Your melody echoes the cello phrase, 'Sing softly.'" Clarissa inhaled, lifted her sheet music, and began with measured grace. Her soprano voice floated over the ensemble, each note weaving through the strings and piano. The movement swelled, a tapestry of sound that spoke of renewal and hope. Poirot, eyes still closed, tapped his cane with a satisfied rhythm, recognizing a masterpiece taking shape. During a brief pause after the second movement, Poirot addressed the group. "This is wondrous, yet I sense a final nuance in the finale. A transitional passage in the second violin that must lead decisively into the coda. Marcel, accentuate this bar. Let it propel the ensemble into a cohesive conclusion." Dandai nodded, studying his part. "Understood." They resumed, first violin and second violin dancing atop Ingrid's resonant oomd, first violin and second violin dancing atop Ingrid's resonant cello and Ambrose's piano. Clarissa entered once more, her voice soaring above the ensemble in a triumphant recapitulation of the opening theme. As they reached the final chord, synchrony achieved, the room filled with a reverent hush, followed by applause from Eleanor, Jules, and Dr. Bedford, who had quietly arrived to watch. Ambrose exhaled, relief and pride mingling in his expression. "We have done it. This quartet, our collective effort, breathes as one." Victor laid a hand on Ambrose's shoulder. "You created a platform for reconciliation and artistry, and we have responded. Now, let us prepare for the premiere." Clarissa folded her sheet music, her eyes luminous. "The world awaits. Tonight, we shall rehearse in the drawing room for one final run-through before public performance next week." Ambrose rose, stretching. "Excellent. Hercule, thank you for uniting us. Without your insight, these voices might not have coalesced so harmoniously." Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching with modest satisfaction. "I merely guided, monsieur. The true beauty lies in your talents and shared devotion to music." He glanced toward Eleanor. "Please arrange tea for all. A moment of camaraderie shall fortify these artists." As tea was served in delicate china cups, Earl Grey for some, chamomile for others, the quartet members exchanged light conversation. Topics ranged from technical passages in the score to stories of past performances in distant cities. Ambience shifted from intensity to warmth and fellowship. Ingrid raised her teacup. To collaboration, the true heart of music. Marcel, cradling his violin bow, echoed to collaboration. Clarissa, her voice still melodic, joined in. To collaboration. Victor shared a final nod. To collaboration. Ambrose lifted his cup with a heartfelt smile. To collaboration, and to the enduring power of art. Poirot took a sip of tea, allowing the fragrance to settle his thoughts. Looking around at the circle of artists, each transformed from rivalries and peril into unified purpose, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Here, in the study of Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse, a new symphony of friendship and artistry had been forged, ready to resonate far beyond these walls. Chapter 16. The Grand Premiere of Unity. Evening descended over London's Langdon Opera House as a gentle hush settled upon the audience. Inside, the stage was set for the world premiere of Ambrose Fairchild's String Quartet in E minor, a work born not only of his compositional genius, but also of the trials and alliances forged since the fateful overture that nearly silenced him forever. Ornate crimson curtains hung just behind a quartet ensemble, whose instruments gleamed under the warm glow of footlights. 2 violins, a cello, and Ambrose's own piano positioned at center stage, waiting to bind the strings into harmonious unity. Backstage, nerves hummed beneath the polished veneer of calm. Ambrose sat at his piano bench, his fingers gently caressing the keys in silent rehearsal. Beside him, Clarissa Benton adjusted the folds of her evening gown, her heart quick with anticipation. On the left, Victor Crandall ran a gloved hand over his violin at polished neck, recalling with gratitude how Poirot's intervention had enabled their collaboration rather than rivalry. In the crescent of readiness sat Marcel Dubois, second violinist, and Ingrid Larsen, cellist, exchanging reassurances in low whispers as they tuned to match the A of the oboist's preference. A moment before the concertmaster raised her bow to summon the ensemble, Ambrose took a steadying breath and glanced toward the wings, where a single figure stood quietly. Hercule Poirot, bowler hat in hand, eyes shining with pride. Ambrose nodded, and Poirot offered a discreet thumbs up, an unspoken benediction that conveyed more support than words could provide. With a firm yet graceful gesture from the concertmaster, the quartet launched into the opening movement. The B2 violins emerged first, their voices delicate yet confident, intertwining in a dialogue that seemed to mirror Ambrose's own journey. Tentative steps transformed into sure exploration. Marcel's second violin responded with a gentle counterpoint, while Ingrid's cello wove a rounded foundation beneath them. Ambrose's piano entered seamlessly, its rich chords grounding the ensemble and lifting the texture into a resonant unity. The audience leaned forward, enthralled by the warm interplay and the unmistakable depth of emotion behind each phrase. As the first movement progressed, subtle motifs emerged, echoes of peril, whispers of redemption, and an undercurrent of hope. Clarissa bent her head forward, her fingers tracing patterns on her score, though she would not sing until the second movement required her soprano voice. She caught Victor's eye, offering a supportive smile that reflected their shared memory of earlier trials. Together, they played as if the very air trembled with possibility. The quartet became more than an ensemble of individuals. It became a living testament to collaboration and resilience. Silence followed the final chord of the opening movement. A soft murmur rose from the audience, acknowledging the triumph of music over adversity. Ambrose allowed himself a small, grateful smile before turning toward the second movement. Here, he had written a song for Clarissa's voice to enter, a gentle lament that evolved into an impassioned declaration. As the piano's delicate arpeggios gave way to Clarissa's clear, soaring soprano, each note resonated with renewed purpose. Her lyrics, crafted by Ambrose to reflect the journey from shadow to light, floated above the strings like a prayer, the quartet supporting her like a choir of unwavering faith. Throughout the second movement, Victor and Marcel's violins shimmered with warmth, their bows dancing over strings in precise unison. Ingrid's cello filled spaces with a rounded glow, and Ambrose's piano wove the harmonies into a tapestry of soothing grace. The audience's collective breath seemed to synchronize with the music's ebb and flow, as if every heart beat in time with that message of redemption. When Clarissa's final note faded into silence, the hall remained still for a heartbeat before applause rippled from the stalls to the balconies, gentle at first, then growing in fervor. During the brief intermission, the musicians retreated to a small anteroom backstage, where soft lamps cast a warm glow over their instruments. Victor leaned against a padded bench, catching Ambrose's eye. "Monsieur, your quartet surpasses anything I have heard in years. Together, we have turned fear into art." His voice was hushed but earnest. Ambrose nodded, wiping a bead of sweat from his temple. "This work belongs to all of us. Each dedication, each trial, each act of compassion found its voice within these movements." He stretched, allowing the tension to ease for a moment. "Now, we press on with the finale." Clarissa, seated nearby, closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "The finale will encapsulate the unity we forged, the strength of community. Let our voices carry that message." She rose, smoothing her skirt, and gathered with the ensemble to return to the stage. At the first downbeat of the final movement, the quartet surged forward with a confident allegro, the two violins intertwined in spirited motifs, accompanied by Ingrid's resonant cello pulses. Ambrose's piano provided a propulsive foundation, each chord clear and decisive. Clarissa's voice entered later, weaving an uplifting melody that soared above the instrumental lines, no longer shattered by fear, but radiant with promise. The music swelled, crescendoing into a triumphant declaration. The fact that darkness had come was undeniable, but so was the truth that kindness and collaboration could vanquish it. Behind the pack of spotlights, Poirot felt his heart stir with pride. In that sweeping finale, he recognized not only the composer's genius, but the community's unwavering support. The audience, too, felt this resonance. When the final chord rang across the hall, an immediate eruption of thunderous applause followed. Standing ovations echoed from every corner as Ambrose and the ensemble bowed deeply, tears glistening in their eyes. Clarissa stood beside Ambrose, her hand resting on his shoulder in quiet solidarity. Moments later, the ensemble reconvened backstage to receive bouquets of roses and lilies, the same flowers that had once brightened Sir Charles's drawing room. Critics approached, praising the quartet's ingenuity and the composer's emotional depth. Lady Pembroke herself emerged from the wings, radiant in a silken gown, extending her hand to Ambrose. "Monsieur Fairchild," she said softly, her voice filled with genuine warmth, "your music transcends the ordinary. It speaks directly to the soul. Tonight you have gifted the world a testament to the enduring power of unity." Ambrose bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Lady Pembroke. Your patronage and belief in my art have made this possible." He glanced at Victor. "And to my colleagues, your dedication has given this work wings." Victor offered a heartfelt nod. "Together, we remind the world that artistry thrives not in isolation, but in the bonds we forge." In the midst of congratulations, Poirot approached Ambrose and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Monsieur, tonight's success confirms that your music is now unassailable. You have transformed strife into symphony." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the jubilant faces. "Your gift to the world is not merely the notes you penned, but the example you set, showing that compassion and collaboration can conquer even the darkest of overtures." Ambrose's eyes shone with gratitude. "Your little grey cells guided me every step of the way, Hercule. Without your wisdom and unwavering resolve, this moment might never have come." Poirot inclined his head with modest satisfaction. "I merely followed the music of justice. Now, the world will carry your message forward." He turned, tapping his cane gently against the polished floor, and retreated into the embrace of admirers, content in the knowledge that Ambrose Fairchild's legacy would endure as a symphony of unity and hope. Chapter 17. The Verdict Beyond. Music a crisp autumn breeze whispered through Westminster Magistrates' Court as the final day of sentencing dawned. Grey skies loomed over London, but within the venerable stone edifice a sense of anticipation suffused the corridors. Sir Charles Marwood, Lady Fairchild, and Eleanor Fairchild arrived together, their expressions resolute. Ambrose Fairchild, supported by Dr. Jules Beaumont, moved with measured confidence, his recent triumph at the Langdon Opera House still resonating in every note of his stride. Victor Crandall joined them, cane in hand, having recovered further from his past entanglement in the conspiracy. Clarissa Benton, wearing a discreet black dress, accompanied Peter Lawrence, whose press badge gleamed on his lapel. Each bore witness to the day when justice would extend beyond music, delivering finality to the forces that once threatened Ambrose's life and legacy. In the courtroom proper, Hercule Poirot arrived last, his impeccable bowler hat and cane both symbols of his precise artistry and detection. He exchanged a brief nod with Inspector Gray of Scotland Yard, who had overseen logistics, and took his appointed seat near the front, where witnesses had testified in the preceding days. The defendant, Maestro Lorenzo Gallo, sat before the bench, face pale but composed, his once stalwart posture now slumped in resignation. Next to him, the thin-eyed conspirator from Fleet Street, now identified as Reginald Smythe, bore an air of nervous dejection. Alongside them sat two additional members of the Finnegan Circle, awaiting judgment for their roles in attempted murder, forgery, and conspiracy. Lady Fairchild, seated near the press benches, whispered to Eleanor, "I scarcely thought this day would come. After all that transpired, to see the conspirators face justice." Her words trailed into silence as the Lord Chief Justice footnote presided. Yielding to formality, he opened the session. The court convenes to render sentence for the defendants convicted of conspiring to commit murder, attempted murder, and malicious libel against one Ambrose Fairchild. I shall now deliver the verdict in accordance with the law. A hush enveloped the room. The Lord Chief Justice's measured voice began. Lorenzo Gallo, formerly a celebrated conductor, you were found guilty by a jury of orchestrating multiple attempts to poison Mr. Fairchild, of commissioning the sabotage of his piano, and of arranging threatening communications to coerce a cancellation of public performance. Your actions, motivated by envy and spite, compromised not only a man's life, but the integrity of art itself. It is the opinion of this court that your malice extended beyond mere rivalry. It sought to extinguish brilliance. As such, I sentence you to life imprisonment with the possibility of review after 25 years, reflecting both the severity of your crimes and the possibility of remorse shown at trial. Gallo's shoulders slumped further as a murmur rippled through observers. Lady Fairchild instinctively placed a hand over her heart. Ambrose's gaze stayed fixed on Gallo for a moment before he respectfully lowered his eyes. Turning to Reginald Smythe, the Lord Chief Justice continued. Reginald Smythe, you confess to forging threats and assisting in the procurement of poisons intended for Mr. Fairchild. Though you acted under the influence of Gallo's leadership, you nonetheless contributed to a conspiracy that endangered the life of an uncertain, innocent man. Your cooperation with the prosecution mitigates your culpability. I therefore sentence you to 10 years' imprisonment, to be served concurrently with any prior convictions regarding forgery. Smythe's head bowed. Clarissa, seated nearby, clutched the armrest of her chair. Relief mingled with sorrow. The final two conspirators, Lionel Whitcomb and Harold Lytton, both minor participants, received sentences of 7 and 5 years, respectively, for accessory and conspiracy charges. With the Lord Chief Justice's pen descending silently upon the parchment, the gavel fell. Court is adjourned. The struck sound resonated like a solemn chord through the chamber. Guests rose, relieved that the ordeal had reached its judicial conclusion. Outside the courthouse, the gathering press and curious onlookers had assembled beneath rain-darkened skies. Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild led Ambrose and Eleanor through, a throng of reporters eager for statements. Victor Crandall, Clarissa Benton, and Peter Lawrence followed closely, forming a protective circle. Poirot emerged last, cane tapping softly on the granite steps. He paused at the foot of the stairs, allowing the family to pass before him. A reporter called out, "Mr. Fairchild, how does it feel to see justice served?" Ambrose squared his shoulders, voice steady. "Justice has been served today, but more than that. I feel gratitude for every soul who stood by me, my family, my friends, and Monsieur Poirot. Without them, I might never have reclaimed my life or my music." The reporter pressed on. Maestro Gallo's former admirers claim his motives stemmed from a desire to preserve artistic integrity. What do you say to that? Ambrose answered calmly. Artistic integrity thrives not through violence or coercion, but through collaboration and respect. Maestro Gallo's methods were antithetical to art's true spirit. Today's verdict confirms that. Meanwhile, Poirot strode toward the family. He offered a curt nod to Inspector Gray. L'affaire est réglée. May the music that follows be free of darkness. Gray inclined his head, appreciative of Poirot's guidance throughout the investigation. Lady Fairchild approached Poirot, eyes moist with gratitude. "Monsieur Poirot, words fail me. You have given us back our son, our brother, and restored faith in the very art that nearly imprisoned him." She pressed her gloved hand to his arm. "How can we ever thank you?" Poirot's expression softened. "Votre reconnaissance suffices to save a life and restore harmony. That is the finest reward for my little grey cells." He paused, glancing at Ambrose, who had joined them, arm-linked with Eleanor. "Now you may proceed to your next composition, Monsieur Fairchild. The CUEY world awaits your music, untainted and triumphant." Victor Crandall stepped forward, offering a handshake to Poirot. "Monsieur, your wisdom granted me the chance to atone. I shall dedicate my first public recital to the memory of this day, and to you." His sincerity shone from his eyes, and Poirot returned the gesture with a slight nod of approval. Outside, autumn leaves danced around their feet. A mist born of the pending rain swirled around Lord Pembroke's driver, who had come to collect the Fairchild family later, ensuring their safe conveyance to the awaiting carriage. As they departed the courthouse lawn, Admiral Lane, a long-retired naval officer and a loyal patron of Ambrose, stepped forward, offering his congratulations. "Fairchild, you have shown that music endures beyond the darkest storm. We shall host your debut performance at the Royal Athenaeum next month. Consider it a patron's promise." Ambrose raised a hand to acknowledge Lane. "Your support warms my heart, sir. I shall compose a suite befitting such an honor." He turned to Eleanor, squeezing her hand. "Return to the studio tomorrow, ma sœur. Our tasks resume." Eleanor smiled tenderly. "Of course, brother. Together we shall continue this journey." As the carriage's wheels rolled down Parliament Street, Poirot lingered on the steps of the courthouse, watching the Fairchild family recede into London's bustling traffic. The wind brushed his coat, and he raised a hand to steady his hat against the chill. For a moment he allowed his gaze to drift toward the river, where customs boats glided beneath the grey expanse of sky. Then, with a gentle exhale, he turned and drove his cane into the pavement, the click echoing like a closing chord. In the silence that followed, he reflected on the path they had trodden, from the discovery of digitalis beneath Ambrose's desk to the unmasking of gallows malevolence, from private salons to grand operas, and finally the hallowed halls of justice. Every thread had been woven into a greater tapestry of redemption and collaboration. As he ascended the marble steps, Poirot's determined demeanour betrayed no trace of complacency. Instead, it shone with readiness for the next mystery that might emerge from London's labyrinthine streets. For now, though, the twilight of this case had settled into harmony, and where there had once been conspiratorial whispers and silent poisons within the corridors of art, there now rang only the clear, resonant voices of Ambrose Fairchild's enduring compositions, and the knowledge that music, when guided by truth and compassion, remains humanity's lasting bridge between darkness and light. Chapter 18. The Final Harmony. Several months had passed since Lorenzo Gallo's conviction and Ambrose Fairchild's triumphant quartet premiere. London's seasons shifted from autumn gold to winter's grey chill, and now to spring's budding promise. In Sir Charles Marwood's townhouse, the rooms once heavy with tension had become light with music and laughter. Ambrose sat at the grand piano in the drawing-room, his fingers dancing over the keys as he refined the score of his newest orchestral suite. Beside him, Clarissa Benton adjusted the final vocal lines in the cantata they would perform together next month. Sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, illuminating their shared excitement. Hercule Poirot arrived that afternoon, stepping into the drawing-room with his customary precision. He nodded to Eleanor Fairchild, who hovered nearby, engrossed in a ledger of prospective salon concerts. Poirot's moustache quivered in amusement. "It appears the world of music has reclaimed its rightful rhythm," he observed in his lilting French accent. Ambrose raised his gaze from the keyboard, bowing his head politely. "Monsieur Poirot, it is wonderful to see you. Please join us. We are preparing excerpts for our performance at St. Cecilia's Hall in Oxford. Your presence would honor us." Poirot allowed himself a modest smile and took a seat on the edge of a cushioned chair. "J'ai hâte to listen. Yet I wonder, have any shadows lingered since the Lyceum plot? Does any hint of malice still stain your path?" Ambrose shook his head, resolute. "No. The final fragments of Gallo's circle were apprehended months ago. Even Reginald Smythe's remaining co-conspirators have served their sentences. I have received no further threats." He stroked a page of music. "Each note I write now seems infused with gratitude rather than fear." Clarissa, sitting beside Ambrose with her vocal score, added, "Our collaboration has thrived. Lady Pembroke's salon has commissioned another recital this summer, and Victor Crandall's sonata will premiere alongside my recital of your cantata. The artistic community has rallied behind us. Instead of recoiling in suspicion, they have embraced our shared vision." Poirot raised a thoughtful brow. "And what of Peter Lawrence's writings? Has his critical pen continued to champion your work?" Ambrose nodded. "Peter wrote a series of columns celebrating the healing power of music. His most recent piece in the London Gazette proposed that opera houses dedicate one evening each season to works by composers whose lives overcame adversity. His influence has spread beyond London. I received word from Edinburgh that they will host such an evening this spring." Eleanor, closing her ledger, approached. "Father and Mother wish to invite you to their garden party next week, Hercule. They hope to thank you in person, and perhaps surprise you with a private performance of Victor's new violin concerto." Poirot's eyes gleamed with appreciation. "I shall attend with pleasure, mademoiselle. It seems I am always grateful for invitations that involve both art and hospitality." On the morning of the garden party, Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild's rose garden bloomed in a cascade of colour. White trellises bore fragrant climbers, and wrought-iron tables held delicacies prepared by Mrs. Pemberton. Ambrose stood near a small dais, violinist Victor Crandall poised by his side, and Clarissa Benton warmed up her vocal registers. A small gathering of patrons, critics, and close friends assembled on wooden benches under a canopy of apple blossoms. Sir Charles took the podium. "Dear friends, Today we celebrate not only the arrival of spring, but the restoration of harmony within our family and our musical community. Many owe their gratitude to one man, Monsieur Hercule Poirot." He motioned to the detective, who inclined his head politely. "Monsieur, would you do us the honor of opening our recital?" Poirot stepped forward onto the dais, his cane tapping gently on the wooden platform. He surveyed the assembled faces, each reflecting admiration, relief, and pride. "Mesdames, messieurs, it has been my greatest privilege to guide the Fairchilds through a season of treachery and ensure that Ambrose's music triumphed. Yet the most profound lesson is this: art flourishes not in isolation, but through collaboration and compassion. Tonight's program embodies that truth." He gestured toward Victor and Clarissa. "Now please enjoy these offerings, which symbolize unity beyond rivalry and hope beyond fear." The duo launched into Victor's new violin concerto. Victor's bow slid across the strings with lyrical fervor, Ambrose's piano accompaniment weaving golden threads of harmony beneath the soaring violin. Clarissa followed with Ambrose's cantata, her soprano voice drifting above the garden in a melody that spoke of rebirth. As the final chords faded, applause erupted, mingling with birdsong and the rustle of apple blossoms. Poirot stepped down from the dais and approached Ambrose and Clarissa. "Bravo," he said, his voice low but sincere. "The music you create honors the spirit of resilience, a testament that art can transform suffering into beauty." Clarissa offered a grateful smile. "We owe so much to your guidance, Hercule. Without you, this garden might never echo with such harmonies." Ambrose gazed at Poirot, his eyes alight. "Your little grey cells orchestrated more than evidence. They directed our recovery. For that, we remain eternally thankful." He reached into his coat pocket and retrieved a small leather-bound journal. "Please accept this, my personal sketchbook of musical ideas, spanning melodies conceived in both darkness and light. May it inspire you, as you have inspired us." Poirot accepted the journal with a gracious nod. "Merci, monsieur. I shall treasure these notes as I do the memory of every triumph born from adversity." He rose and lifted his hat, acknowledging the kindly faces around him. As twilight descended, guests lingered beneath lantern-lit trees. Sir Charles and Lady Fairchild embraced one another, content in the knowledge that their family had weathered all storms. Victor and Clarissa shared whispered plans for future collaborations, their bond strengthened by shared creativity. Lawrence conversed with patrons about upcoming events, his pen ready to chronicle tales of artistic perseverance. Ambrose lingered by the piano, trailing his fingers across the polished surface. He breathed deeply, reflecting on how far he had come, from a composer threatened by poison to an artist celebrated for resilience. Eleanor joined him, her notebook filled with new ideas for salons and recitals. "Brother, the future awaits. With each composition, you give voice to hope itself." Ambrose nodded, closing his eyes briefly. "Music is our final harmony, the bridge that unites us all." He opened his eyes, meeting Poirot's gaze from across the lawn. "Thank you, Hercule, for restoring that bridge." Poirot offered a modest smile. "The world is full of mysteries, Monsieur Fairchild, some hidden in shadows, others awaiting discovery in crescendos. But as long as there are musicians like you and friends like these, darkness shall never silence our song." With that, he tapped his cane and began his farewell stroll through the blossoming garden, each step a reminder that some harmonies endure beyond the written page, echoing in the hearts of all who dare to believe in the healing power of art.